felt like I was in a movie. Wall Street. I just caught
Bill, sir, good to see you again. You okay? Yes. Come on now.
You got this.
Just between
I guess so.
That's right. Yeah, everybody knows. How's it going? How's it going? Hey, Bill. Good to see you. Huh? Oh, yeah. Hey. Good to see you. How you doing? Thank you, Hop. Hey, Leon. Good to see you. Hey, guys. Hey, long time no see. How you doing? You're looking calm. Thank you. Sorry to worry. I had to get that in.
I know. Hey, this is yellow, but it's not the tag. I promise you.
Oh, come on.
I'll tell stories about that.
No, man. Good.
Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order, please. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the March 15th regular council session. We'll call the meeting to order. If you would please stand and join me while we pledge allegiance to the flag and remain standing for the execution. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father in heaven, please give this council guidance and direction tonight as we go forward to look at some very important issues that affect the citizens of this community. Direct us in the way we should go. Bless our soldiers that are protecting our rights to be here and to discuss these issues. Look out for those who are less fortunate than we are. And in thy name we pray. Amen. Amen.
I'd like to welcome all our guests and visitors tonight. And the first item, we have a proclamation we'd like to present. There's a cloud here. Okay, I'll just read this if it's okay. The Sam Cloud's insurance office on Main Street was destroyed by the fire. Was it 2 years, 3 years ago?
2 years and 2 months.
2 years and 2 months, almost on Christmas, 2 years ago. You know, a lot of people would have used that as an opportunity to rent another place, which they did, but to stay there and not return back downtown. You know, when the interstate comes through a small town, businesses seem to want to go out that way. But we've been working really hard to energize our downtown and to keep it viable and moving along with more and more events and so forth. So, you know, we're so proud that he has chosen to renovate the building that he did and did so beautifully, I've got to tell you. Very maintained the historical appearance, and it really looks good. I'm sure some of you, maybe many of you have been in it. But if you haven't, you ought to take a look at it, because it did a great job. It fits downtown well. And we felt like we needed to recognize him for that effort in downtown. So let me read this if I may. Whereas the Mayor and Council of the City of Canton, along with the Main Street Board of Directors, are pleased to recognize Sam Cloud and Lamar Roberts for the reconstruction of 121 East Main Street building known as Jones and Cloud Insurance after the devastating fire of 2009. The easiest thing to do after a disaster is to do nothing. We thank Mr. Sam Cloud and Mr. Lamar Roberts for spending the time and considerable expense to bring back an historical building with the care and quality that they did. The completed building of Jones and Cloud Insurance blends beautifully within downtown and sets an excellent example to other property owners in our city. Their efforts demonstrate what can be done to preserve and restore our historical buildings. And whereas, as citizens and property owners, Mr. Sam Cloud and Mr. Lamar Roberts have proven through their efforts that they are truly committed to the revitalization of downtown and its economic success. And keeping business downtown is good for our city and helps to create a livable and viable downtown. By choosing to rebuild downtown after a devastating event, Jones and Cloud Insurance shows a commitment to our city that deserves recognition. And whereas it is the desire of the mayor and council, as well as the Canton Main Street Board of Directors, to recognize Mr. Sam Cloud and Mr. Lamar Roberts for their generous contribution to the beautification of downtown Canton and our local economy. Now therefore be it resolved this 15th day of March 2012 that the mayor and council of the city of Canton, as well as the Main Street Board of Directors, recognize Mr. Sam Cloud and Lamar Roberts for their efforts in the revitalization of downtown Canton. We extend our appreciation and gratitude to them both with the hope that their accomplishments will set an example for others to follow. Congratulations. I have one special guest I would like to introduce. It will be Mary Akins. Oh, there you are. Okay. Come on, stand up if you will. I want everybody come up here. I want everybody to kind of see who you are, because you're going to be you are a very important part of this community now. Mary is the executive director of the Cherokee County Arts Council, our Arts Center. So we're really thrilled to have her. She is an artist herself and has taught art. She has shown, of course, and sold art in many places, because Ellie and I and her travels around have run into her in different locations and art shows and so forth. She's also taught at Abernathy Arts Center, Fulton County, Alpharetta Arts Center, and has a studio in her home. And she's a native of Atlanta, and I just wanted to welcome her here on behalf of the city and just really tell her how much we appreciate her coming here. We have quite a number of folks here associated with the Arts Council and the arts community here in the county, so she's going to do a great job. Mary, if you have anything you want to say, come over here. She's a little bit shy, but...
Well, I want to invite everybody to come by the Arts Center. We have all new programming. The theater's rocking and rolling again. Sheriff Garrison had an event there. We've had Alice in Wonderland. The gallery, we just closed our high school show. We're getting ready to start our elementary school show. I hired my first 2 teachers today to teach. And we're going to rock and roll with Camp Imagine this summer. So come by and see me. I'd love to welcome you there.
Thank you. You know, at a time when a lot of governments are cutting back on the arts, you know, I think this council recognizes that it really adds value to the community, and we need to support it every way we can. So thank you for taking the job, and thank you for being here, and we're looking forward to everything that you're going to be doing with the Arts Center. Okay. I will have, need a motion to consider the approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Cummings?
I'd like to have separated out of the consent agenda, or make the motion to remove out of the consent agenda the minutes from March 01, the items D and E for separate discussion.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to go down each item on the consent agenda. We have a motion, and do we have a second?
What do you say?
What's that?
To remove.
Two, and just eliminate the whole thing.
Well, my motion needs to either be seconded or not seconded, and then Mr.
That's fine.
I'll second Mr. Cummings.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and That motion was to restate that.
Is to separate out of the consent agenda the March 1 minutes and items D and E for separate discussion.
Okay, D and E, all right. Anybody, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
With that motion, does that mean we're not going to discuss each of these items?
No, it means they're just gonna be moved
Okay.
from where they are. They're being taken out of the consent agenda, but so they can be discussed further, other than just voting carte blanche to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion?
Well, the only one I have is that I'll abstain on the February 16th minutes because I wasn't in attendance.
I'll modify the motion to remove both minutes out of the agenda,
Okay,
or out of the consent agenda.
okay. All right, we have a motion and a second.
Mr. Mayor, the special event permit ordinance, I thought that would be the first reading of that. So does it need to be on the consent agenda for action? Was the intent to pass that tonight?
Well, it's intent to have the, I guess, see, that's actually adoption. We already had the first reading, right?
I don't think so. I don't think there was an ordinance before and tonight. I prepared it a week ago.
Okay,
So
so
it
this
would
will
have
be
been
the first reading?
Yeah, now, I mean, ordinance allows 4 council members can vote to waive the 2 reading requirement. And that's why, if that's what you want to do, we need to take off the consent agenda.
I think we should just abolish the consent agenda.
I think that, so you want to,
Yeah, let's just abolish the consent agenda and discuss each items individually.
okay,
Second.
motion and second that we pull all items off the consent agenda.
The first one was never voted on, so we should vote on it, then we'll go back to the second.
Or you can withdraw your.
Yeah,
Withdraw it, modified.
Okay, a motion and second. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those no. Well, we're voting for the motion. All right, so what we would do then is that we would vote on the minute. Let's vote first on the minutes. Okay. Yeah, we gotta do that. Let's go ahead and have our
Mr. Mayor?
10-minute public input here. Yes.
On the, to consider approval of the agenda, I had an item I wanted to add.
Too late now.
Well, but he was talking consent,
Yeah.
and I'm talking.
You want to amend the agenda to include an item, all righty?
Under old business, it would be the reservoir building, which was discussed at the last council meeting and was to be brought forward at this council meeting. We need to make a decision on where we're going with that at the moment. Thank you.
Have a motion and second to amend the agenda to include the reservoir building, plan approval, I'm assuming is what it would be. Any other discussion or questions? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All those opposed, motion.
Mr. Mayor, I've got one motion to further amend the agenda to
Okay.
item 7D, the defects, full form agreement. 7D,
Okay.
the discussion of possible actions during the public-private partnership for municipal. The principal, Mr. Chandler's here, but he has requested that we remove that from the agenda for this meeting and place it on the agenda next month on our voting meeting, and he's here if anyone needs to ask him.
Okay. The request is to remove that item 7D from the agenda for this time and place it on the agenda, I guess, for the work session.
Well, for the agenda on the voting session.
Of the April session.
Would Mr. Chandler want to make a statement, the fact that they got 4 gentlemen here?
Okay.
Hey, we requested that, Councilman Huffman, because earlier in the week, the lender, based on the interest rates dropping over the past 60 days, agreed to lower the interest rate on the transaction by 1/4 of a point. Additionally, the state agreed to pick up 3 items out of the operating budget that they would do themselves on the transaction, and those were handle the landscaping themselves, do the routine window washing, and then handle the monitoring of security system and maintenance of the security system on the building. Subsequently, between the interest rate dropping and the state agreeing to do those 3 items, the rental rate has gone down on the building, which meant that all the documents had to be redone to reflect that reduction. And I don't feel that everyone, the documents I think just got to Mr. Dyer probably at 4 o'clock or 4:30 or so. So I think it's on the best interest of everyone involved, and the mayor and council have opportunity to look at that before it votes. So we would just like to request it being tabled until the next meeting, if that's okay.
Okay. We have, you got something else, or we need to vote on this?
It was said at our next voting, we'd like for them to come at our work session to go over those issues so that we'll have that documentation to study prior to, 2 weeks later, we make a vote.
So,
Okay.
yes, sir, that's fine.
Sure. First Thursday in April.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
That's for discussion, and then the decision would be in the second meeting or the third Thursday.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to amend the agenda by removing, postponing the item 7D until our April sessions. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
did we ever vote to approve the agenda?
We've
We've amended it 3 times, but we've never voted to approve it.
We're not voting to approve it with those amendments.
Those specifically, I vote again.
Okay, because I hope Susan's kept up with this, because she will be jumping around on this agenda here. Okay, we have a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, as amended. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Yeah, now we're at the 10-minute public input period, which is probably going to be longer than 10 minutes, but we can deal with that. We have, first of all, Mr. Beckmeyer. Bachmeyer, I'm sorry. Yes, sir. I thought that was an E or O. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, sir.
My name is Coe Bachmeyer, and I work with Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I'm the regional vice president here in Atlanta, and we're here to talk about the motor vehicle excise tax. This is something that we learned about a few days ago from Mr. Bryan. He had contacted us that this was going through, your vote, and we wanted to get an opportunity to come and talk and to really educate everybody on what this is and really how it works. This happens certainly in our industry across the country, and certainly has happened in the state of Georgia. One of the things that we want to talk about, as a company, we're certainly more a prosperous downtown. We feel like a prosperous downtown is going to benefit everybody in the community, but we feel like this tax would unfairly burden the responsibility on our business. There are 3 rental car companies or 3 rental car businesses in town, and I would probably say that a lot of the business that we do would support a majority of what that is. Different ideas that we would certainly support would be, rather than having the rental car industry bear the burden of some of the downtown development projects, would be to potentially add a $10 fee on somebody's business license so that everybody shares the burden of the responsibility. We're certainly in a competitive industry. Over the last year since this bill has been passed in the state of Georgia, the industry has certainly changed. I mean, the internet has changed our business and commoditized it. In terms of its competitiveness, in the last few years, you've had Hertz Rent-A-Car and Armada Rent-A-Car close down and leave your town. And we're really the only national rental car provider still here in Canton. The origins of the rental car tax certainly come from in Atlanta when Ted Turner wanted to pass the arena tax to build Phillips Arena. You know, the thought behind that was that folks from the outside of Atlanta would travel into Atlanta, stay in a hotel, rent a car, and that would provide the funding for the Phillips Arena. And the reality is that this has grown throughout the states to different cities. And the reality of our business is 90% of the business that we're doing are with your residents here in Canton. These are local residents in the business that we're doing. It is not with out-of-town folks. This is a 3% tax that you're going to impose on the people that already live here. Currently, our tax contribution in state and local taxes is $150,000. With this proposed tax hike, it's going to tax our business an additional $50,000. So from a burden standpoint, you know, certainly we feel like that's an unfair burden that will be placed upon our business. Recently, the city of Gainesville went through this in the last month or two. The city of Gainesville, who would have generated similar revenue to the city of Canton, decided that they were not going to vote it through because it was not an efficient tax. Through all the collections processes and the people that they were going to need to audit the processes, they decided that it wasn't going to collect enough money to really make it an official deal or an efficient deal. By our count, there are 535 cities in the state of Georgia and 159 counties. The last count in 2009, there were only 18 cities that have adopted this tax since it's been put into position. You know, from an affordable transportation standpoint, our goal is to continue to provide affordable transportation and to remain in the city of Canton. Our rates have been pretty stagnant for a number of years. As everybody knows, the automobile industry over the course of the last 3 or 4 years has gone through a considerable number of changes with 2 of the major manufacturers going into bankruptcy. So our industry has become very, very competitive, and it's changed. The dynamics have changed. And again, I would reiterate that we are the only national provider of a car rental company in the local town. You know, our goal certainly is to make sure that we continue to stay within the local market. If this bill is passed, you know, a lot of the business that we do about 20 to 25% of our business is for insurance replacement customers, but we do a lot of business for regular customers who want to rent a car for the weekend or take a trip. We have a lot of corporate customers that come in and rent business, and those again are the people that are going to burden the tax. Recently, as a company, we've looked at purchasing the Waffle House location that is next to Highway 75. There are some different things that are going on with that, but certainly by passing this tax, you know, this leaves our option as to really to not go after that location and to leave town and to really service Canton from Woodstock like the other national competitors have done. Because this, you know, the additional $50,000 of taxes would play a part in our business. So, thank you very much, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thanks for your comments, appreciate it. Rebecca Greer.
Rebecca Greer, and I'm here this evening representing owners of the 91 homes in Pinnacle Place, River Green, City of Canton. What I say also pertains to many other homeowners in the City of Canton who have fallen under the misconception that they were living on city streets, not private streets. Tonight, a proposed resolution addresses a particular group of residents. These residents have streets designated private for no other reason than to allow concessions to developers while giving the city impact fees and property taxes with no obligation to maintain the infrastructure. It was a win-win situation for developers and prior city officials. Unfortunately, it was a lose-only situation for citizens who bought into these areas thinking that they were truly a part of the city. When streets such as ours are through streets, between city streets, and look the same as other city streets within the River Green community, the question comes up as to why these streets are designated as private on a plat. Pinnacle streets are not gated and were never planned to be gated. There are no signs restricting traffic on our through streets. A street that is designated private on a plat is not necessarily private as one might think of a private street. The private street designation was done to benefit two entities, the city and the developer. Our private street designation was not given to benefit homeowners. The city found a way to receive millions of dollars in impact fees and millions of dollars in property tax revenue that would never have to be used to benefit any of the future residents of our so-called private streets. The city approved plats that were required to be in compliance with all city standards and then allowed variances and revisions without proper authorization. The city failed to supervise construction of the infrastructure, and the city failed to perform compliance inspections. The developer found a way to have a plat approved with little or no construction supervision by the city. Even after owners had occupied their homes for more than a year and proposed plat revisions directly affected these owners, the developer was allowed to make plat revisions as the one vote declarant of an HOA, and blanket approval was given by the city without proper procedures being followed. As the one vote declarant of the HOA, the developer saved thousands of dollars in streetlight costs by entering into a perpetual lease with Georgia Power, knowing that with private streets he would not have to pay for and turn over the street lights to the city. Every public employee that I have spoken to has been courteous and has helped me gather information. I heard that was done before my time, that would not be allowed by the current administration, we're really sorry about this. Residents who live in a neighborhood such as mine were not even allowed routine patrols by the police department because of these agreements with developers designating their streets as private. Pinnacle streets are good to go. All Pinnacle infrastructure is completed. All Pinnacle lots have occupied homes. All Pinnacle streets are top coated. Our HOA has an agreement with Georgia Power to pay off our street lights upon city street acceptance. Our plat filed for recording February 27, 2004 was signed by the Director of Planning and Zoning, the Mayor, and the Water Company, and was required to meet city standards with design and construction specifications conforming to city codes. Our streets are complete and do not require any fixes. Accepting our streets at this time will not cost the city anything in street repairs. The $167,000 Pinnacle owners paid the city as residential road impact fees has been used by the city to repair public city streets in need of repair. Whether the former administration was just eager to increase the tax base and gain revenues for the city, and in their ignorance did not realize what the impact would have on future owners, or whether this was a deliberate act of collusion with the developers, this situation must be addressed and must be corrected. We are holding the city accountable for the past injustices perpetrated by the previous administration and are asking the city to right these wrongs and correct the situation. Please favorably respond to the proposed resolution regarding private streets. Allow those currently living on designated private streets who thought they were going to be living on city streets the opportunity to become full-fledged residents of the city of Canton. This resolution is not asking the city to spend money to complete private developments. No funds are being requested. The resolution is only allowing residents of private streets the opportunity to apply to the city for acceptance. As city streets, just as many other designated public streets and neighborhoods currently have the right to apply once completed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bill Cornell.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, I'm the president of Village of County Creek Condominium Association. I'm not here to accuse you of collusion or anything like that. We've been trying to get the city to pick our roads since about 2007. We've been kicked in the teeth by the previous administration, simply told to go away. Our roads are in excellent condition. We, like Pinnacle Place, the roads are top coated. We, in fact, last summer spent about $2,000 repairing broken curves, things like that. There seems to be a concern that we were chartered as a gated community. The connotation and description of a gated community insinuates some amount of security, some amount of usefulness. This was never, ever the case. It would be more descriptive to call us a community that had some gates. The way the gates were installed, they were installed incorrectly. The keypad to operate them was on the wrong side of the road. And the placement of the gates was such that if they had been utilized, if they actually worked, you would have tractor trailers and large trucks that turn into our community to turn around, backing out onto Del Surrey Road. On that big curve, that would be totally intolerable. The developer, I only moved into the community in 2006. Before the developer turned it over, the gates never operated, and the developer made no attempt to repair them before the community was turned over. I just want to tell you that we're city, we're an island. We're surrounded by the county. We were annexed for no other reason, no other conceivable reason to have annexed our community, other than for the taxes. So I'd just like to urge you to pass the resolution. It seems to me, in our lifetime, we very seldom get the opportunity to right a wrong and do the right thing at the same time. I think you've got that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. John Rust.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, I don't think anyone disagrees that the current charter is flawed. Approximately 17 months ago, a citizens committee was formed to suggest the best possible fixes for these flaws. Countless man and woman hours were expended on this effort. Our meetings were always open to the public, and we solicited help and suggestions from city council members, the mayor, the city manager, beginning with our very first meeting. Our perspective was always what is the best for the city of Canton long-term, and we attempted to remove current personalities from our discussions. No one had a vested interest in the ultimate result, and we were never trying to change our form of government. The following helped and participated on this citizens committee and deserve your thanks: Judge Marion Pope, Barry Bishop, Jeannie Adams, Richard Kemp, Mandy Ballinger, Nell Magruder, Andy Bonner, Jerry Merritt, Mike Chapman, Mark Robillard, Carol Day, Stan Rogers, Bill Grant, Pat Gold, Norm Semple, and myself. Also thanks to Bill Bryan. This might surprise you, Bill. You came to quite a few meetings, and we really appreciated your input. Truly. Jack Goodwin, Bob Rush, former council members Pat Tanner, and Amelia Rose. Special thanks to the City Council committee that was formed in January 2012, composed of Hookie Hoffman, John Beresford, Glenn Cummins was the chairman, Pat Gold, and myself. Also thanks to Bobby Dyer and Scott Wood. And last but not least, a real sincere thank you to Mayor Gene Hobgood for getting this started and guiding us when we needed to be guided. The City of Canton has problems bigger than this charter. The water pressure will not fall if this charter remains flawed. Not gonna happen. The document in front of you at the city council today will fix the flaws. It's a very good fix, but only time will tell how good it is. The needs of the Canton governing body, as addressed in our charter, will undoubtedly change as the city grows. This is a living document. It does not have to go back to sleep again for 7 years if it needs to be tweaked sooner. There is time for elected officials to step back as individuals and decide what they think is best for the citizens, and there's a time to pull together and vote to move forward. That time is now. I urge you as a united city council to adopt these changes to the charter. If we cannot come together on this one, there isn't much hope for the bigger issues. Thank you again for all your support and your votes.
Bill Bradley?
I'm here to discuss some things that happened to me while this meeting in the community service program. I was in a really bad car accident, which turned out to be my fault, and I was sentenced to community service at 88 hours. Upon going to the street department to fulfill my obligation, the first day I was there, I informed everybody that I was here to do work, but I was injured. I was life flighted out, separated my AC joint and had my hand crushed. I was told to go home. I didn't quite understand it. They said they couldn't use me. Made a couple phone calls, spoke to Teresa downstairs, and they were instructed to keep me and use me as they should. So that's what I did. The first day that I worked there, I was exposed to pornography by one of the city employees. A couple days later, I was asked to be secretary for Dave Canton, who is the director. When he first arrived, the first day I was there, he had I'm sorry for the language, he had called me a bitch. The second day, he had said, "Hello, sweetie." On the same day he had called me sweetie, him and another employee engaged in behavior that is beyond me, grabbing each other on the buttocks, telling each other how good looking they are. Very strange. It's demeaning, horrible, and I'm offended. I'm here to tell you this because I don't want this to happen to another citizen. It's amazing that somebody in this position can do that to somebody. Especially, you know, I'm 6'3", 250 pounds. If he's doing this to me, I can't imagine what he's doing to other people. It's very concerning. I went up the proper chain and went to speak to Mr. Wood. And I was met with hostility. I was asked what I did for a living, so this man could gauge my personality and my character. I'm better. I'm ex-law enforcement. I don't need to explain that to anybody. There was no empathy. There was nothing. I was dismissed, and I was told I was looking for a lawsuit, which is ridiculous. So I went to the mayor, and he was the first person that really took me seriously and gave me some consideration. And I think it's just wrong. I don't think anybody should be subjected to this. And in this day and age, you know, lawsuits can happen. I mean, if I was a woman, forget about it. It would be, it'd be crazy. You just can't do that to people. And I'm hoping that you consider what I'm saying and take some action against these two individuals. I don't want him to be fired. You know, he's a family in a house. But suspension without pay possibly, demotion maybe, something. Something needs to be done. And it needs to be monitored. And perhaps some classes to let some people understand, you know, you can't say these things to people. That's really all I have to say, and I appreciate your time, and I hope to hear from you guys and what actions that you take.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. I do want you to know that we,
that is an item on our executive session tonight, so we will be discussing the situation with the council.
I appreciate
They have been
it.
provided the information that you provided me.
Yeah, the one thing was also a little disconcerting is when I did go to Mr. Wood and I explained to him my concerns, he told me he had handled the situation and put a note in Mr. Jennings' file. And I don't know how you could really come to a conclusion and put a note in someone's file when you haven't even talked to me yet. I find that to be a little strange as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Ben Key.
Mr. Mayor, Council, appreciate your time tonight. That's a little tough act to follow, but we'd like to talk about the downtown rental subsidy program. First of all, I'd like to thank the mayor and council, Ginger Gerard, the Downtown Development Authority, and all members of the Main Street Board for their tireless effort of the glaring problem that we do have in downtown Canton. However, I feel that subsidizing rent is just the wrong way to go about it. In my opinion, it's just another case of government picking winners and losers in the private sector. And you ask, where do I come into this? Why do I even care? Well, I am a real estate broker. I own a property management company that's located at 270 East Main Street. I make my living on bringing in new tenants and keeping new tenants downtown and all over the place. So no one other than myself has even more of a vested interest in getting new businesses downtown. So back to the winners and losers. Obviously, you guys say that the winners are going to be all the merchants of downtown because activity breeds activity, and I grant you that. However, we're not even sure this is going to work. As a landlord representative, I offer free rent all the time, but I still have vacant space. The losers in this proposition are obviously the rental car companies. We have 3 of them. They're already looking at moving. And who's to say that they don't move to Highway 1? Still have the benefit of Canton, but not the city limits, not the 3% sales tax, the excise tax. And just like all corporations don't pay taxes. They collect taxes from the people who use their services. So ultimately, it's the citizens that wind up paying the taxes. Who else is hurt? The existing business owners. They're being promised that this program will hopefully bring in new businesses that will spawn growth. Well, what if they don't come? Who's to help R&M Hoagie Shop? Who's to help Keith's Jewelry Store? Who's been here for years and years and years, never asked for a handout, never gotten one. Another problem I have with it is that it puts too much authority in hands of the Main Street Board. From what I understand, they will be the sole final say-so as to who gets the subsidy and who doesn't. And I know people on the downtown board; they're all fine, upstanding people. But when someone comes to town or to the board with a new business venture that may compete directly with theirs, are they going to abstain from the vote, or are they going to vote along with the best of the whole downtown area and all of Canton? That's just a question. Another big problem I have with it is that if no one does qualify for the program, the car companies don't get their money back. It just goes in the black hole of government to be spent on something else that the government deems as good. I was taught never to complain about something unless you wanted to offer a solution. So I just have a couple of things that would hopefully that you guys would consider. When I got here and saw this on the consent agenda, I was a little discouraged, but luckily it's been taken off, and hopefully we can have some more dialogue about it. I would propose, rather than levying the tax on rental car companies, why not do away with business license fees, permit fees, impact fees, go on down the list for anyone that wants to do anything in the central business district. We've got a fine map. We just spent 2 or 3 years doing our 25-year land use plan. We've got a map that delineates the area. Why not just give the landlords and tenants and people who want to build new infrastructure in downtown, give them the advantage of not having to pay these fees that, unfortunately, I'm not even sure why we have them anyway. We have the people on salaries that get paid to do it, whether there's new fees, new plans to look at or not. I think that's about all I have to say, but I appreciate you guys' continued effort to revitalize downtown. Like I said, no one can be against it. It's a great place. It's in my best interest to get as many people, and to keep as many people downtown as we can. I would just ask you guys to strongly reconsider how you guys go about doing it. I thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you.
Jennifer Dunn?
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Dunn. I own a business here in Canton called Social Street. We're a digital agency. I am from Canton, Georgia. I was born here. My father was a police officer. My mom worked at Cherokee High School for 17 years. I went to Cherokee High School. I lived here most of my life. And like I said before, I own a business. Now, I am also here to talk about this rental motor vehicle excise tax, but I'm not here on behalf of Enterprise Rent-A-Car. When I moved back to Canton from Atlanta last January, I spent a snowy day wandering around downtown Canton, looking at properties. I wrote down phone numbers from windows. I started to call people and ask about rentals. Only one person called me back. And that, well, no, two people called me back. One of those was Mr. Ben Key. Hey, Ben, you didn't offer me any free rent. I mean, maybe I want to stay. Just saying. Yeah, they're friends of the family, by the way. I mean, we all know each other here. This is Canton. So only one other person called me back. And you know what the first thing she said was like, have you considered Woodstock? So really, I just didn't feel like downtown Canton was very business friendly to my business. Now I'll tell you a little bit about my business. When I started out in 2008, 4 years ago almost, it was February 28th, 2008, I made $15,000 that year in my business, not very good. In that 4 years, I built up my business. Last year, I made almost $250,000, almost $250,000. I employ 2 people. I'm actually hiring right now. I would love to have my business in downtown Canton. But unfortunately, I feel that this rhetoric against this excise tax is really I'm really nervous, is a slap in the face to small business. Basically what I see is a chance to do something good for small business, hometown girls like me, not Enterprise Rent-A-Car, which is a $14 billion business per year, by the way. I don't really think that a small tax like this is going to hurt your business, but it could really help one like mine. So all I'm asking is for you not to table this anymore, to talk about it, to vote on it. And when you vote, vote for your hometown girl. Don't vote for Enterprise Rent-A-Car.
TJ Cochran?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, Mr. Wood, Mr. Dyer, Ms. Stanton. You never get recognized. I wanted to say hello to you tonight, and citizens as well. My name is TJ Cochran. I'm a resident of the City of Canton. I'm also the president of the Cherokee Arts Center here in downtown Canton, and I am the newest member of the Main Street Board. I'm here tonight to probably take up a lot of your time to talk about this rental car tax for the City of Canton. I want to first off start by saying I am in support of the plan to levy the excise rental car tax and use it for economic development and tourism purposes. My family, personally, is a huge user of rental cars and has been for many years. Although we rent cars several times a month, we have never once paid out of pocket for our rental car. It has always been through insurance policies for repairs, or our company travel expenses have always paid for the rentals that we use. I'd like to address 3 main issues, the first of which is Enterprise Rent-A-Car, as well as other entities and rental companies across the United States have been working for years through lobbyists to eliminate the local tax charged for the use of rental cars. In June 2010, H.R. 4175, the End Discriminatory Taxes for Automobile Renters Act of 2009, was presented as the opponents compared these local taxes and state taxes as taxation without representation. Many supporters, including Enterprise, of this bill in Congress claimed that since the renters typically lived out of the jurisdiction, they were being taxed but had no representation, as they couldn't vote for the local politicians who placed these taxes on the books. This bill has never passed and actually never even made it out of congressional committee. It is apparent that the rental car tax is not a deterrent to rental car companies opening in other cities, such as Woodstock, who levied this tax. Therefore, it should not be a deterrent for you to do business in Canton. We've been informed recently that Enterprise states that more than half of their cars are rented in any given community are rented to local residents and more than 90% of those customers at the Canton Enterprise are local residents. Enterprise, however, as a private company who doesn't disclose their financials, does not mention that a majority of these customers are not paying out of pocket for these rentals, but instead have their insurance policies, their company travel expenses paying these amounts. Additionally, Enterprise is failing to realize that by boosting the tourism in the city of Canton, the business of Enterprise will increase as well. You guys, Canton has a great infrastructure in place with roads and the airport just up the road. All of this is ready to support the tourism in downtown Canton and in the surrounding area. We are not taking advantage of it. The second point I want to make is that this tax is widespread and common. I have for the committee, and I will give this to Ms. Stanton, the ordinances for Savannah, Cartersville, Kennesaw, Milton, Woodstock, and Marietta, all of which impose a rental car tax. In the Marietta Daily Journal, just today, the City Council of Marietta voted to grant $30,000 from their rental car taxes to the theater on the square in order to show support for having the theater in downtown Marietta. Guess where these funds were coming from? It comes from the city car rental tax, which is currently, by the way, $53,000 over budget. That means that they brought in more money than they expected to bring in, so they have extra money to spend in other ways to bring tourism into the city. We want Canton to be a great city. I think all of us who live here and grew up here agree to that. And bringing tourism and feet into downtown Canton is going to help us do that. We've already demonstrated how bringing people downtown through Canton's First Friday, the Canton Festival of the Arts, the Valentine's Chocolate Walk, and other downtown events can benefit existing businesses. Adding more traffic to the area can only benefit local businesses and organizations like the Cherokee Arts Center, where I'm the president. While the Arts Center is currently beginning a resurgence, thanks to Mary coming on board with us, our efforts of the new board and our new executive director, we need the residents of Canton and tourists coming downtown to make a true impact in our business. The third point that I'd like to make is that the Main Street Board has presented a plan that we believe will be an effective use of the funds gathered through the rental car tax. By offering an incentive to the new businesses who want to locate downtown, we are working to bring more citizens into the historic downtown loop, thereby increasing the foot traffic to all businesses downtown. This plan is not about bailing out existing businesses by giving them free money. It's about helping all businesses, new and existing, by bringing paying customers to the downtown area. Throughout the day today, there were lots of emails going back and forth among the Main Street Board, and several of the city council members, I believe, received some of those emails. In one of those emails, it was discussed about the city of Woodstock and how they use their rental car excise tax. I have a letter here from Billy Peppers, who is the Main Street Board Director, and with the mayor and council's permission, I'd like to read that letter as well. And I'm reading, so y'all bear with me here. Mr. Mayor and esteemed councilman, it is my understanding that this evening you will continue discussions about the use of the rental car excise tax for downtown development purposes. While this is a local issue, I would like to encourage you this time as an opportunity to remember the importance of your central business district and the importance of downtown revitalization. The movement to restore and rejuvenate Georgia's downtowns continues to be the largest job growth provider for municipalities in our state. In 2011, communities participating in the Georgia Main Street program created over 3,200 jobs through 675 business starts and over 11,000 jobs in the last 4 years. That is the equivalent to 4 Kia plants. Downtown programming to support economic development requires an incremental approach of public and private participation. The Main Street Initiative in Georgia is based on the community working together to realize the importance of the central business district to the vitality of the city. While Woodstock does not utilize the rental car excise tax for downtown development, as many communities in our state do, we realize nearly 100% of Woodstock's hotel excise tax for downtown uses. We do not do that in the city of Canton. In short, the excise tax is the fairest of all taxes because it is user fee based and is charged to the user and not the business. This tax is also limited by state law, making it equitable from city to city in both the rate charged and the use of the proceeds. In short, having the tax will not put you at a competitive disadvantage with neighboring communities. The success of downtowns in Georgia requires creative thinking for the process of economic development along Main Street. Programs such as rental assistance that utilize an excise tax are just such out-of-the-box approaches necessary to increase downtown viability. If the issue in a community is attracting businesses to vacant spaces, a subsidy may be an appropriate incentive, but a facade grant in our community has been successful in creating and changing downtown image and increasing historic preservation. The downtowns of Cherokee County are what makes our community unique from any other county in the metro Atlanta area, and as such, our Main Street program stands united with Canton and others to assure that we expand commerce, grow jobs, and attract private investment to Cherokee in a collaborative, non-competitive effort. Whether through this excise tax or another funding source, it is imperative to the Main Street approach that communities through their elected officials stay committed to improving the central business districts as our state. We wish your community, your Main Street program, Downtown Development Authority, and tourist arm nothing but the best in your continued efforts to improve downtown Canton. Sincerely, Billy Peppers, Main Street, Woodstock. You know, at this point, I'm a hometown person myself. I grew up here much like Ben did, much like Jennifer did. Went to Cherokee High School, grew up here, lived here most of my life. And I really think that at this point, it's really vital that we put some emphasis on downtown Canton. You know, my grandmother also grew up here, and she tells me stories about how downtown was booming. It was the place to go in Canton when she was a kid. Today, it's a ghost town. You know, I have an art center here. I come down and I go to the businesses that are in downtown Canton. And I think it's important that we as a Main Street board and we as a city council truly support what we're trying to do here in downtown Canton. And, you know, for the enterprise folks, we'll accept your application just like anybody else's for rental assistance if you want to move up here. Thank you all. Thank you.
Michael Butler.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Also, it's kind of entertaining that we all sort of talk about how we are from here, because I'm seeing people that I actually went to high school with. You know, I want to stress that we're all friends here, and I'm a local business owner. I own Audio Intersection right there outside of the downtown loop, but was invited to become a Main Street board member approximately a year ago. And since then, I would say that I've probably reinvested probably $50,000 more of my own money with local businesses because of the family feel that I have by being local. So instead of, for example, choosing to redesign my store through somebody that might be a corporate, somebody that I found on the internet, instead, any kind of design advice I'm going to get from Bill Grant. I could go through it, of course, that's sort of off the cuff to talk about, but what I really want to stress about being in a downtown district is that it is the epicenter of local business. When you have Riverstone and you have Marketplace at both ends with the Olive Gardens and Red Lobsters and all the other corporations of you know, every single town that you go into that makes it looks like every other town because of all the corporations. The downtown area is the only sense of the actual local businesses. Now, I'll be the first to admit we've got way too many lawyers in the downtown area. but I'm also of the free market. If a lawyer wants to have an office in downtown Canton, hey, it's a free country, so that's a great thing too. I don't want to repeat too much of what TJ alluded to of who actually winds up paying for the rental cars, because I too have rented several rental cars actually at Enterprise, and every time that I've rented a car, it was paid for with either insurance or when I was working for Pioneer Electronics, and the company that I worked for paid for it. Other members of my family, my stepdad is a traveling salesman. He rents cars a lot from Enterprise, and his company always pays for that car. Now, I hate justifying a tax increase. I'm a Ron Paul supporter. I hate taxes, okay? But the Main Street Board's bank account is embarrassing, okay? We have so little money in it that, I'll give you an example. As an audio intersection guy, I love movies, TV, sound, and I want to bring my gift of sort of being a liaison between people who don't understand electronics and people that do. I want to bring that to downtown Canton. I want to add music at the restaurants, and my big push is for the downtown movies in the park at night. Now, one of the most important things to being successful with a movie in the summertime is having a gigantic screen, right? You want to make it as big as you possibly can. It's approximately $60,000 for a really good quality screen, not to mention several $1,000s for a projector. Well, luckily I had family in the business and was able to acquire a screen that is about the length of a tractor trailer and is about, so 36 feet long and 15 feet tall. I think that would suffice as calling it big. And I got it for about $700. I paid for it out of my own pocket. Granted, it was still not $60,000, it was $700, but I paid for it out of my pocket because the Main Street Board, you know, I want us to be able to use our 4-digit bank account for other things, okay? This money, one of the first things you do as a Main Street Board member is you go to a Main Street workshop where other Main Streets across the state get together and talk about ideas of what they've done that's been successful. And Billy Peppers was the main speaker at this workshop that I went to, and the very first thing he talked about was trying to find creative ways that is legal within the state, what do you call it, allowances, I guess you would say, of ways to get income into the Main Street. He did it through hotel tax. That was his trick, so to speak. They have a budget of about $300,000 a year, and it shows. Go to Woodstock on a Friday night, Saturday night. It's really fun, and all of those people that you see down there are spending money. And all that money eventually makes its way, a portion of that, towards tax dollars. A couple of these things I was going to mention TJ covered, but the plan as we see it, I know it was brought up in discussion that we don't have a plan. First of all, I'd like to say that there's never been a plan for downtown Canton, and that is the problem.
Thank you.
A huge part of the problem. The other thing is that the plan is, I cannot think of a better image in my head, well, I can't, but to help downtown Canton than a huge banner on the Jones building. That big, we call it the big white elephant, the ugliest thing in downtown Canton. Have a sign on it that says rental assistance available, because there's a tiny example. From what I understand, if somebody would take that building over, they can tear off the ugly stucco, and there's actually a beautiful brick underneath it, and under the ugly oxidized aluminum there's actually green marble and all sorts of things, and no one knows, and they're not gonna know. There's absolutely, it's going to continue to be a ghost town unless we do something. And this is something. It's a start. And there is a plan in place. Now, let's suppose, as BK said, what happens in the event that this is unsuccessful? That, I mean, because I have been offered free rent before as a business owner, and it did not entice me to move away from downtown Canton and move to Sixes Road, where I was offered about $18,000 in free rent. I stayed here. So it could be the exact same way for somebody on Sixes Road to not move to downtown. What if? So then we have $48,000 sitting in a bank account. Well, I can tell you as a member of the Main Street Board, with that kind of money, each and every one of the board members is going to very thoughtfully find ways to have absolutely zero self-interest in it, to do movies in the park more often, to put more porta-johns at the first Friday celebration that we have. That's one that I sort of try to kick back up, and I invite all of you to come out on the first Friday of every month. We need more people. And again, we're not able to pay our bands to play. They all have to come for free because we can't afford to pay them. And meanwhile, we have the city of Woodstock with a $300,000 budget paying and putting on amazing concerts and absolutely drawing all the traffic there. So, if I've got anything else I wanted to cover. The only other thing I'd like to say, the taxation, again, I hate taxes, but you would hear me staunchly oppose this if it was an income tax, a property tax, impact fee, business license tax increase. There are lots of other ways that I would be staunchly opposed to this, but a consumption tax is the way that I would like to see our entire country move forward. And I think that Ginger, I applaud her for choosing this particular avenue as the way that we can help get some things going in downtown Canton. So thank you very much.
Okay, that was our 10 minutes public input. We got one more you want to?
Yeah, I want to say a little bit, but not a lot. I spoke the last time at the workshop. Okay. And all I want to do is reinforce what Ms. Greer said. She broke it down very, on many of the ways it needed to be brought down. The variances that were given, on Carroll Day, I'm from the villas at Riverstone, and some of my neighbors are here with me tonight too. I have come to the council meetings on a regular basis for the last several years, and I've attended them at some point throughout the 14 years I've lived here. People who have spoken to me, other developments, made good points. One of the things I've come to realize by looking over what they've become aware of and what I've become aware of is that plats on all of these developments aren't necessarily filed when they have the final sign-off from the city itself. And I can speak to that because I know of that. Private streets are supposed to be built according to the codes of the state and the city. They were not in other places where I have lived because they were done according to code. It was the option of the residents to make that choice. Here it was the governance of it to do it, but it was not the option to do it because of the negligence of the people who were assigned to take care of it. And I can tell you also that on the property in which I am part of, the final inspection on our property for the developer was done on November 20th, 2007. There were deficits, and I have a packet here that explains those deficits. These are photographic, but I know that there is also a written documentation to that, which I have not been able to obtain. But no bonds were posted to cover those deficits. And when we did ask for any bonds, it was put aside. It didn't happen. So communities have tried to work with it while it was in the process of happening, while the developers were here, while we had, hopefully, people with open minds and thinking logic to address it. It's not a matter of if it's right or if it's wrong. It's a matter of what was legislated, what has been documented, and actually what has happened, and the reverse order in which it was signed off on and happened in spite of the deficits was lack of bonding. That's pretty much what I have to say, but I would like to thank all of the people who have spoken tonight for their deep dedication to the facts, to bring things forward in open forum before this council. I can say from my own personal experience that people have the opportunity to hear what's going on here. There was a time prior to this administration where you didn't hear it. Everybody got their packet to the council like that's part of the procedure, but that information was not out to the public. When you came to a council meeting, it wasn't discussed. It was said, well, you've got a packet and there was a vote. I commend the people that we have working with us and for us to go ahead with thoughtful consideration of the issues at hand. Thank you.
Okay. Moving along. I believe the first, Susan, you may have to keep me on track here since we've shifted some stuff around from the original agenda, but I believe we need to act on the were you out on the 16th? Is that? Okay, so we got to do those separately then, I guess, right? We need to need a motion. You have in your package the minutes from February the 16th. Are there any deletions, corrections, or anything to those minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay. All members voting for the motion with the exception of Mr. Rush. Okay. March 1st, 2012 minutes. Do I have a motion are there any changes or anything to those?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion with the exception of Mr. Cummings, who is abstaining. Okay, item D, approval of ordinance to adopt the 2012 edition of the Code of Ordinances of Canton, Georgia. This is just the compilation of the ordinances that we have, which are, I think, reasonably up to date. I'm not sure what the most recent is, but ordinances and amendments to ordinances that have been passed for the city. This is a document comprising all those.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the Code of Ordinances. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Item C, approval for the mayor to sign the GMA agreement. We spoke about that at the last meeting. Basically, it's something that we need to do in order to, in times of natural disasters, that we can apply for some federal FEMA and GMA funds. Any questions? Do I have a motion that we approve that?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Approval for the Mayor Pro Tem to sign the First Amendment to the Development Agreement regarding Commerce Parkway. We talked about this. Do we have a motion regarding that? Okay. Anybody want to know what it is? You already know what it is. Okay, if we don't have that, have no motion. Okay. Item E, the approval of the rental motor vehicle excise tax ordinance.
That's been moved.
Oh, okay, it has, all right. So the next one needs to go down to, so F was moved too, right?
No, he is moved. He's not moved.
Oh, okay. Actually, we took everything off, didn't we?
Everything was off.
Okay. E, approval of the rental motor vehicle excise tax, second reading, and approval of budget resolution regarding the expenditure of funds collected.
I'd like to make a motion on that, Mr. Mayor. My motion is to table this until our next voting meeting.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I would like to say, I certainly oppose tabling this. I think we need to act on it.
Point of order.
Yes, sir.
table motion only postpones, it doesn't, I'm using the wrong word, table a motion only pushes it to later in this meeting. If you want it at a later meeting, the motion has to be to postpone it, not table it.
Thank you, sir. I'll change that to postpone to the next voting meeting with discussion at our next work session.
We have a motion to postpone to the next work session.
And a second, Jack.
And a second. Any other discussion?
Mayor,
Go ahead.
this has been before us. We heard from the citizens and corporation tonight to delay it for what reason or purpose, I cannot understand. I think that we owe it to the issue to vote on it, and let's step up to the plate and make a move. Could be detriment to me. I'm for the program, but I'm saying, let's look at it now.
Mayor? Yes, sir. I would like to see more detail as to how the Main Street program would indeed handle the monies. In other words, what are the particulars to qualify to get the monies rather than hand it over to them with no direction whatsoever. I just, not to say I want to micromanage them, because that's not the intent, but I would very definitely want to know if we're going to do it, and I'd say if, to know more about it. So I think it's reasonable to postpone until the next.
Well, I think the thing is, the question is whether or not we're going to levy the tax. It's not how it's going to be used necessarily directly. I mean, the fact that, I don't know why we would go to the trouble of developing policies and procedures and so forth for its utilization. We know it has to be used by law for tourism and stuff like this, enhanced commerce and so forth. We have to know that. But if we don't pass this tax, we can't do that. Now, the council will certainly get approval over, once the procedure has been evolved as to exactly what the qualifications are, how it's to be dispersed, and, you know, how it's going to be operated. The council will get to see that before that is. But the question tonight is not how it's to be used. The question really is, are we going to levy that tax? We know it has to be used by law and for certain circumstances.
In the process of managing a business, you can project revenue. Being that we have been informed tonight that there's a possibility that one of the agencies might decide to move out if we pass this. And the point being, if we look at it now, go through a planning process and saying we're going to bring in 40,000 or 38,000 or what, and lo and behold, we lose that. So what is the point of worrying about the money? Let's move ahead with a program that will identify the possibilities, and then we will see what the money is. We can't now project unless we have crystal balls, which we don't. So what we should do, in faith, step forward, give these people who have put a lot of time and energy into this, say, let's go for it, let's look at it.
Anyone else?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say one thing. This perception that these funds have to be used for tourism, promoting business, that kind of thing, that's an example right there of why we need to postpone it. That's not correct. The city of Woodstock uses their rental car tax program for public safety, for fire and police, which they can also do by state law. So that's just an example of the lack of information that we have. So I really want to do this right. I think we just need to table it for 1 month till we can have more detailed information. I don't want us to fall in the same trap as the federal government of
well, let's just start collecting the money and then figure out what to do with it later. But let's get it piling up, and we'll find a use for it. I guarantee you that. But instead of let's collecting it and pile it up, let's have a very specific, detailed program use for it, and then justify going into somebody's cash register and scooping 3% of their gross revenue right off the top. There's been some wonderful creative ideas floated out here tonight. This whole issue was brought forth, some very good dialogue that we want to happen. I spent 2 hours with Mr. Billy Peppers on Monday myself, and learned a lot of things that they're doing that we could be doing, and TJ, I'm glad somebody finally asked him, because they're doing it right down there. And he will tell us anything we need to know. There's so much more to say about it, but let's give it a month to cool off, shake out, get all the facts straight before we just dig into somebody's back pocket and pile up the money and say, we'll figure it out later. Thank you.
One last comment, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
One additional thing that I would be interested in, if we indeed do the tax, that should it be limited to downtown? And I'm saying it might be a little bit easier for the car rental people if they knew that it was going to be used for all of Canton business. That maybe that would be more beneficial to them. They could understand it a little better if we bring businesses, and I'm not talking about the rent subsidy for all of Canton, but if we did some type of whatever that would include all of Canton business.
Well, I think, downtown is an area that a lot of people don't want to come to with a business. They simply don't want to come. And you know why? There's an interstate goes right through this county, and there's several exchanges out there. That's where these businesses want to go. To keep our downtown alive, we're going to have to take some extraordinary steps and give some incentives to these people to come downtown to bring a business downtown. Now, you talk about delving into somebody's 3% cash drawer. You're not doing that. They're passing that along. Enterprise is not going to be paying that. People who rent those cars are. It's a user fee. That's what it is. That's the way our government ought to be going on everything we could possibly do. We didn't have any problem taxing stormwater, did we? Impact fees. We just levied a tax, and when the money come in, we said, this is what we're going to spend it for. We didn't know at that particular time. We're doing projects now all the time with stormwater money that we had no idea were even out there at the time we started collecting it. I think, we need to do this. We need to do it tonight. We don't really need by waiting another month or 2 weeks or whatever. We don't have anything to gain, because this money has to be spent in certain ways. It'll be spent in accordance with the law. The question is whether or not we want to do it.
Mr. Mayor, I think we've had a lot of people come here tonight and express pro and cons to this, and I think they put us in these chairs to make a decision, and I think just pushing it off a month isn't going to change the facts at all, and I think it ought to be put to a vote.
Okay, the motion is on the table. To table the motion. Postpone. Beg your pardon. Which puts it off till, I guess, the work session next month. Okay. We're going to do this by a roll call vote, so everybody needs to know where we stand. Okay. Mr. Goodman, where do you postpone?
Postpone.
Okay.
No?
Okay. Mr. Beresford? No? Postpone? Motion carries. It's gonna be drug out for another month at least before we make a decision, but that's okay. That's the council's decision, that's where we'll be. The next item on the agenda is the adoption of the special event permit ordinance. It's an amendment to the alcohol ordinance. And this
would be the first reading. If you wanted to act on it tonight, you need to have a motion to waive the 2 readings, which is permitted by our ordinance.
Probably shouldn't we actually put this in new business?
Well, we're part of the consent agenda, which then we just removed it, so I guess it fell into new business. Yeah. Well, we hadn't got the whole
Let's
business.
go ahead and let's go ahead and do this one now. Okay. Do we have, I think we should consider this. We don't have to get in a major rush. I think we consider this the first reading and proceed as we normally would with anything else. You know, well, I think we need to do that. All right. You all have taken a look at it, and this would actually help our downtown as well. And this would not just be limited to downtown. This would go anywhere there's a special event. Okay? It's all over town. So hopefully it'll help our whole city, but especially on events like Friday night and all the different events that are taking place downtown. This really should help a lot. I think it'll help a lot. Okay. We'll consider this the first reading. The adoption of which should be up for a vote on the Thursday, second meeting in April. Under old business, we have discussion of impact fee funds to be paid under Northside Commerce Boulevard Agreement, First Amendment. All that all that was to ask what that amount is so that the council would know. And I am told that it is $48,943.98. Almost $49,000. That's just basically for informational purposes. Okay. So yes, okay.
Further along on this, 1.4 million that we talked about.
Yeah, that's another area there. You'll wait till we get to that. Okay. Yeah, no, this was just an amount that we wanted to make sure we knew what the amount was, and that everyone was, aware of it. No votes necessary. Okay, item B, 7B, discussion of private street resolution. Let me say first, and I'll let Mr. Beresford speak to that as well. What this does not accept a street, any private streets, but what it does is adopts a procedure for which each of those communities with private streets or a private street out in the county may petition this city to make application to the city for their street to become publicly maintained. And I think it's important. What this actually basically says is that where there's a homeowners association, that homeowners association board must vote to turn over the streets if they own the streets, along with 51% of the property owners within that development signatures. If it is a private a street, just a single street that is not under any kind of homeowners group, then this resolution would require 100% of the residents' signatures. Okay, but if it's under homeowners, the board of directors can deed this property over, and along with 51% of the property owners. Is there anything else, Mr. Beresford? I know you've taken the lead in this effort, so you want to say something else?
There has been numerous misinformation passed around, but I hope everybody looked at the packet I passed out 2 weeks ago in reference to this. One of the things that popped up from time to time was millions of dollars if we come in and take over these streets. That's erroneous. Taking the measurements of those streets using the DOT's $80,000 per mile, we are looking at less than $400,000 to top coat those streets. I am not asking, and the homeowners, as you heard tonight, are not asking to have that done immediately. They've asked it to be brought in to the city, to be considered city streets, and that's what the question is. And at an appropriate time, in the distance, when they come back to bring their case before the council, then we'll be making decisions on a case-by-case basis. I did have a resolution that obviously did not appeal to majority of council, which I understand. Therefore, I worked again with Mr. Dyer in hopes that we struck a resolution with 7 parts that would benefit the concerns and let us come up, as the mayor said, a procedure by which we can identify these individuals and wait at that time. So if Mr. Dyer would be so kind to read the legalese, I'd appreciate it.
The resolution states that there be established an application process for private streets to be accepted in the city of Canton on the following conditions. Number 1, the private streets must be conveyed and dedicated to the city by a deed from the owner of the streets, such that the city will have good title to the property. Number 2, if the owner of the streets is a developer of a subdivision for which a homeowners association exists, then the board of directors of the homeowners association and 51% of the owners in the subdivision must approve the private streets becoming public. If the owner of the streets is the homeowner association of a subdivision, then the board of directors must approve the transfer of the property, and 51% of the owners must also approve the private streets becoming public. All of the streets in a subdivision must be transferred to the city. The city shall not accept only a portion of the private streets within a subdivision. If the streets are in a subdivision without a homeowners association or are not in a subdivision at all, then 100% of the owners of property along the streets have to approve of the private streets becoming public. Number 6, the application must state clearly that if the streets are accepted, the city is not representing or agreeing that it will undertake any maintenance or repair of the streets other than as normally would be done for all city streets. And number 7, the application shall ask whether there is a fund being maintained for maintenance and repair of the private streets, and if there is such a fund, then the monies in the fund shall be transferred to the city as part of the acceptance of the streets.
What this will do, actually, you know, it will create some legwork for someone to normally qualify here, okay? I mean, but it is an application process, and it will allow a street to be brought in. But, you know, someone is going to have to take the initiative from within the development to find out who owns it, and if the homeowners association actually has title to it, then, and they can convey it along with signatures from 51% of the folks within there, within the development. That's, you know, it's going to require some effort to do that. But this is the way we really believe it should be, and I think that it's a beginning of a pathway to bring some streets in and to rectify a situation where the city failed its residents to, in some cases, not all cases, but in some cases, the city failed its residents some years ago. And so we just need to straighten that out.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Beresford, question. I'm all for helping the citizens where there's some wrong that's happened in the past. My question is though, are we building any false hope to some of these citizens that every one of these needs or their needs are going to be met? Because I'm not sure, can we do everything that they want? I would love to be able to say we could, but maybe you can make me feel a little better about that, I guess.
Well, a lot of these are not going to have any immediate maintenance. Some of them are.
Right.
Now, a lot of them weren't built to city specs, but yet with regard to sidewalks or widths of streets and stuff like this. Obviously, we're not gonna go in there and widen those streets into people's yards and do that. We're gonna have to suck it up and take that just like it is. I mean, that's all we have to do. We're gonna have to take it. But, you know, I've seen all kind of figures anywhere. A couple of emails I saw had like 29 miles of private streets. Well, there's not 29 miles of private streets. There's probably 5 to 8 at the most, okay, within there. There's 29 miles, including some of the other streets that are already our streets, but we haven't formally accepted them. We did accept those streets when we accepted their development plan as public streets. Now, some of the private streets, it says on the plat that they're private, but like Great Sky, for instance, those are our streets, whether we like it or not. They're our streets, and we're going to have to maintain them, even if the topping's not there. We're going to have to take measures to ensure that that topping is finalized out. So that's not anything that, the only thing that is that we fail those homeowners from the standpoint of not having a bond to finish those streets out now. That's the main thing.
Could we, you bring Great Sky up, and folks that don't know I live there. Yeah, no, you do that. But there are quite a few lots yet to be developed. Would we not put pressure on the builders who are going to build on those lots before we would come in and try to take these streets? Would there be procedures to pursue those avenues before we do these?
Oh, absolutely. That's a different, that is not addressed in this resolution at all.
Right.
That's not part of this. That's a different animal. We need, wherever possible, if there's still a developer who's viable there, if there's still a builder that's gonna be building in that, we need to put the pressure there. And I don't know, you know, legally whether we can say, okay, if a builder has bought a lot from a developer, and then they come in for a building permit, I don't know if we can legally say, you can't have a building permit. But if we can, that's what we ought to do. We ought to put an end to it and let the builder put the pressure on the developer to come back in and finish what he started.
I just don't want to build false hope and then have to tell somebody we can't.
Well, we do that a lot, unfortunately. I hate that too. Go ahead. Mr. Cummings.
I think we should probably have a motion and then a second and then go into discussion.
Probably so. Did we have a motion? I don't.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
Okay, let's continue now.
Okay, my question is, have we established any criterion to accept private streets? I mean, do we have anything in substance that says it's got to be this way or that way, or is it just simply, if it's a private street and on a plat, and we're going to take it?
Unfortunately, they're all different. I mean,
yeah, but that's what I mean, because I think in some cases, although many of these folks have said there's no maintenance involved, in some cases there may be, as you indicated.
Right.
So, I mean, do we look at that as in each case separately, or?
Right. And what this would do was allow a petition to make application. When that comes in, then our staff would evaluate that, they would take a look at it, and then they would bring the information as I see it before this council. And it would be up to us to say, okay, we will accept those streets. Or there may be a condition, you need to do this, fix that pothole out there before we do it.
Because the other question I had, someone brought up the streetlights, that their HOA was going to pay for the streetlights. I know I live on a private street in a gated community, and we're not planning to go public streets, but we own the street lights, and the HOA pays the electric bill. And in those cases where the HOA owns the street lights, are they paying the electric? And if they are, then are we going to have to pay?
My guess is that be part of the application process is that that the street lights would have to be paid for, but then the city probably would take over the cost of the burning of the lights, but the installation and all that with Georgia Power would have to be paid for by somebody else.
Mr. Mayor, under that example, in the community in question was streetlights. The city was charging back when we were charging $350 for having streetlights for a household. We were being charged $350 by the city, and then also charging the homeowners association $350. And come to find out that we should have had our street lights because we're paying for the pole, but the street light is part of the city. So the city paid back the monies that were collected, and we had light in the neighborhood thanks to the city, but we are paying for the poles. And we will not charge the city. We will pay for those poles and get out of that debt to bring brought in. So that's no money out of pocket again. We aren't looking for handout. We're looking to be treated right.
I think once they would be brought in as public streets, then they would have the same setup as any other public street with regard to street lights being built on the
So there is good news, general fund.
One last question.
Good news from Mr. Rush.
One last question, kind of tying with what's been discussed. Item 6, it says, as normally would be done by city streets, by all city streets. We got some streets, River Green streets are in great shape, but we're going to have some, particularly as 1 or 2 in Great Sky, and it could be other places. And if they brought in and said, we want to have what's normal, well, we might not be able to do normal.
Mayor?
Well, I mean, you know,
Are we being a little vague there to think somebody could hang us on?
no, I don't think so. Go ahead.
Last year, council approved 6 streets, I believe, to be resurfaced. Those streets were picked out by the street department saying these streets are in dire need of maintenance, of being repaired. That is the procedure. So we're not saying, once you come in and once you're granted, then we can turn right around and say, fix our streets. We're not. We're saying, maybe I should have used some other word than normal, but this procedure has always been worst streets get taken care of, and we move on.
That's good.
Mr. Hubbard wasn't on council when this happened, but we talked about Great Sky in the past. In fact, we had our city street crew go out there and look at some of that street, and they had some curbing that was broken, they had some potholes, they had some depth of the asphalt that was not correct. And my question is that type of testing going to be done on all these streets before we accept it? Because if we don't, you know, we're going to
Sure it
be
is.
replacing those.
That's part of the application process. Once it's turned in, then our staff would be evaluating that and making a report to this council before we decided whether or not we would accept those streets.
And then the next question that would naturally follow that is, okay, if it's deemed not acceptable, if there's not enough asphalt, whatever, then what's the next procedure, what's the next step? Here's where I am on this and what I'd like to suggest. John, if this motion fails, then my intention is to immediately make a follow-up motion to bring this issue right back up at the next meeting, but within this month, get Mr. Patton and his department, if possible, if there's enough time, to establish some more specific, detailed criteria for accepting streets, not accepting them. One thing I learned early on about making these decisions up here, and Gene, you taught me this, if you have a template to follow, if you already have a procedure established in place, then the decision comes easy, and it's the right decision. It'd be the easiest thing in the world for us to just approve this now, because then it's out of our hands. We don't have to worry about it anymore. It's Ken Patton's and their problem how to figure it out and make recommendations. Who knows, we may even have to hire another full-time staff person to address all the applications. We don't know. I am in favor of correcting these misdeeds from the past. We've got to do that. But if we go about it now partially prepared, I just see a lot of potential for ill will and mess. So
again, all I'm saying, and John, if it does fail, I will still support it, and we'll keep it going.
Mr. Gunner.
I think the way the resolution is written is that it's an individual evaluation of each one, and all of the factors as to the state of the street and who has to repair it before we accept it or what has to be done would be made on a one-for-one basis. And therefore, passing a resolution doesn't affect the evaluation of the application. We look at each one individually.
Yes, sir. There is a problem there with the resolution. Some streets that are private have to have 100% of the people that live on them. How do we know, how many streets do we have that have 4 or 5 residents? What if we have some that got 30 or 40 residents, and then some, if it's in a subdivision, you've only got to have 51% of the people that live on it? What if you've got people living on the street in wherever, any of these subdivisions, that did know? Because I guarantee you, there's some people that bought these that knew they were private. When I worked for the transportation department with the Cherokee County Board of Education, we would routinely have phone calls from people that live on private streets in new subdivisions saying, your school bus is driving down my private street, get it off, you're trespassing. There are people that live on private streets and subdivisions that bought them knowing they're private, want them to stay private. How is this fair? So it's just another question that has to be decided. It's gone on for years. Why do we have to jam it through tonight and possibly create more problems later?
Mr. Mayor, the reason that I understand that the 100% is where you have an individual street that isn't controlled by the HOA, and the 51% is to give a majority vote of an HOA, or require a majority vote of the HOA as far as the city's concerned. The HOA documents might be require even a higher vote or a higher percentage to even begin the application process. So I think in the generation of the resolution, we've tried to cover all situations, i.e. a private street that doesn't belong to an HOA requiring 100% covers the one individual that's on that street that bought there because he wanted that to be a private street, and everybody on that street will have to agree to it or we don't accept it.
And maybe that's the way it should be. I'm sorry.
Yeah, hang on a minute.
Mayor, I tend to agree with Mr. Ryan. While I can support the resolution as proposed, because it's simply an application process, I think we need to have some criterion for accepting private streets in general, that we have a fixed template, because we're going to have a whole bunch of different things come through, and rather than make a decision individually based on different criterion would be unfair to people we might reject. So I think I'm intent to agree with Mr. Bryan.
I agree with you on that. Mr. Dyer had a comment here.
On that issue, I think you need to decide something. If you set, are you going to set objective criteria, which if met, you will take the streets, no questions asked, or do you want to still have discretion? This process allows complete discretion about whether to accept them or not.
Right.
The more details we start getting into and saying, if you do this, you need on the front end to say, once we establish those standards, that means you're in. Because what's the point of having all that detailed standards if you're still just going to say, maybe not? This allows complete discretion on a case-by-case basis.
If all the problems were identical within the private street subdivisions, we could do it that way. We could have a set of standards and say, you got to meet this before you come in. But there's so many variations of problems within those that the council, I think, needs to look at each one.
Thank you. There was a famous saying going around back in the 2002, 2008, don't worry about width, worry about depth. And it was referring to, as Mr. Bill pointed out, the city did make sure that the depth of the street, the base, gravel, first layer, second, top coat, what's the city standard? What they were saying in don't worry about the width was, we won't put sidewalks here because we can squeeze in additional lots. So there are issues about the widths. Most of them fall in. Now, in reference to jamming it down our throats, if you all recall, last year I brought this resolution to council and didn't get a second. At that time, documents were passed out where people could look at, do research. There has been 4 years of research, 2 years prior to council, 2 years after council. I have looked at this. I am not trying to hoodwink any council member or cajole any council member into making a rash decision. But I think, being that we brought it forward last year and couldn't get any traction, bringing it forward again, passing out the detailed information that I presented. And there's the facts. And it's $400,000. But we aren't asking for $400,000. We're asking to be treated as all citizens in this city would act. Comments?
Question, we've beaten this to the bush, and I question that we need any further discussion, and I'd like to see it go to a vote.
We have a motion on the table, and that motion is to accept the resolution as presented and as read. Any other? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? No. Okay, we will have a voice vote.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, it's up to me, and we will approve that resolution. Next item on the agenda is to discuss the Cherokee County request regarding the funding for Commerce Boulevard extension to Highway 140. This is, I think you all have in your package the, I tell you what, if anybody would like to leave, let's just take about a 2-minute break here before we continue. If anybody wants to leave, you're welcome to stay. Might need to get more interested.
And now?
One of these days, maybe we'll get him back too. We hope.
Deal. Yes, sir. See you next week. Appreciate everything. Give me a call. Thanks, sir.
Okay. Mary Nature. I got a question, but you always keep I'm trying to find out if he's still alive. I need to know. I don't know. What's your name, Jones? Mary Jones. Mary Jones.
A little bit, yeah. I agree with you on that.
there's not a busier
Bob's on there, and I guess we'll go for it,
Good to see you. We have a good evening. If you ever do anything for you, let me know. Thank you. Have a good night.
Whoops, sorry, it's
Are we having fun now?
If you will take your seat again, let's go ahead and get started. It's going to be here late as it is.
Sweetheart. Said there was nothing. He says I'm not
Let's go ahead and get started, please. Okay, let's continue with item B, 7B, 7C, I'm sorry, discussion of Cherokee County request regarding funding of Commerce Boulevard extension to Highway 140. You have that in your package there, and we discussed it before, I think, at the last meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask the distinguished people from Northside Hospital to come forward and kind of give us an update.
Mr. Mayor. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. I think we have some positive things to talk about tonight. First of all, we'd like to thank you. Our road is completed, as you know now. We have a development agreement that has been approved, so we can put that behind us, and we thank you for your support on that. Now, as you know, or you may not know, I believe I brought this up at the last council meeting, the north side now does own 100% of the property from where the road ends all the way through to State Route 140. So we're no longer in a position of where we're waiting for somebody else to do something in order for the road to be completed. We started the design process over a year. It's a fairly complicated section of road, and we are in for DOT permitting and have been in for several months. That completes the road all the way from where it's completed now, including a bridge, two bridges, two two-lane bridges, and it'll be 4-lane all the way over to State Route 140, and then improve about a half a mile to State Route 140 with a traffic signal and all of the appropriate things that our traffic engineer DOT has required. The history, as we were moving the design process along, and the land purchase also had a funding component. And starting prior to December 14th, for a lot of reasons, we started out with 0 funds to develop and build that road. On December 14th, at a lot of credit going to our DOT Commissioner, Brandon Beach, arranged a meeting with the DOT, of which the city was present, the county was present, Northside was present, and we went from 0 to 4.3 in funding from the state DOT. That's concrete, that's in place. And DOT said, then what we expect you to do during this process is to come back and tell us, and I might have started with, the road is $8.5 million is the preliminary estimate. And then would you come back to us and let us know how you're going to fund the remaining balance. We received a letter from, on December 22nd, from Keith Golden, which is now going to believe to be the sole commissioner for the DOT, documenting that had a meeting, and there were dialogue both with the city, the county, and others, and we just, for lack of a better way of handling it, we said we'll just divide it up into thirds, which was about $1.4 million each. Northside wrote a letter to both the city and the county and said that they will put their 1.4 forward, and on February 9th, the Cherokee County Board of Commissioners had a public vote and committed $1.4 million also to the parkway. So that leaves a $1.4 million deficit, and I think that's why you're on the agenda this evening. I know we're here a lot. We have a lot of issues. It's a technical project, but we did listen. Mr. Hayes is in the audience, CEO of Northside. We did listen to the debate that took place with the other development agreement. And regardless of what the ordinance says, regardless of what the development agreement says, there was a great deal of discussion over the funding of the cash element of the development agreement and over, well, you're drawing from the district, which is the entire city of Canton, rather than just Canton Place. After many meetings, I can assure you, and deliberations, if it please the council, we are here to suggest to you that we will cover 100% of the 2.8 shortfall to receive impact fee credits as the impact fee ordinance calls for. We will also stipulate that we will only receive credits from the Canton Place development for the $2.8 million. And then we will also stipulate that there at no time will Northside ever approach the city of Canton to ask for any reimbursement in the form of any other mechanism other than impact fee credits. So we will contain it within Canton Place. We will never come for any cash funding. In essence, as I explained at the last meeting, we in essence, when we first made the commitment to Canton Place, we were approached by the city to create a roadway impact fee ordinance and therefore self-tax ourselves. So as we're going through this development, we in essence would be self-taxing ourselves and receiving credit as we come in, as those building permits and development permits are moved along. Now, one of the things that is not discussed a whole lot is that the 8.5, as detailed in your development ordinance, does not include sewer and water. Now, I know everybody needs sewer, but the water will greatly help the city of Canton because we are going to run 2 lines down both sides of the right-of-way, all the way down to 140, and tie into the 140 water line, as I'm told by your engineering department, is a much-needed asset to the overall water system. That's about $750,000. So it's just not 8.5. To finish the project, it takes a considerable amount of cash over and above that, which we will receive no reimbursement for. Also, you might ask, what is the economic engine of this development has nothing to do with Canton Place, rear of Target, all the way down to State Route 140, is that using the impact fee numbers, just for as you got them published, is that, and I've been told these are conservative estimates, but it's going to be in excess of $500,000 for your park system. It's going to be $130,000 for the police. It's going to be $820,000 for just the fire south. And the road component of that will be about $7.5 million. So there's going to be plenty of cash generated. This allows over time for us to get reimbursed as the development moves along. Now, timing has been a big issue here. I'm proud to tell you that we expect to start work the first part of July. DOT permits are moving along. We have the county, under the memorandum of understanding, is going to put the project out for bid under the normal procedures. We have met with the county and we have those schedules in place. Now, what you don't know is that the 117-acre campus of the hospital is going to be coming to the engineering department, and we've got that slated for a land disturbance permit for a start of January 1st. So these are positive elements of the project moving forward. Today, we stay in close communication with where it stands with DOT, where it stands with the permit. We're constantly pushing them. And we got an email, or Buzz Abrams, our commission chairman, got an email that he forwarded to me where Keith Golden, Mr. Long, the transportation planner, sent the email and said, where do we stand with our funding? Because as I just described here, the meeting was on December 14th, when they came up, went from 0 to 4.3. So I'm hoping, if it pleases the council, that you vote on this issue this evening, that we fund $2.8 million, which is the shortfall between the county and the DOT funding, and that we only receive impact fee credits for it, and that we define that impact fee reimbursement through the Canton Place development, subject to a development agreement that will be much streamlined over the other one. We're thinking 4 or 5 pages max, 2 pages. We'll accept 2 pages. It will be very streamlined. So I appreciate the opportunity to present this to you. I hope you see our enthusiasm, because we are on the cusp of starting something that we had a dream of in 2004, and it's very, very close. Yes, sir.
Don, I think there's a critical issue here, that the DOT has offered up this 4.3, and they do have time constraint. And we've got to move on this.
Yes, sir.
And we need to make a decision and get with the program, because we could find out DOT is going to look off somewhere else. So it's critical that we make the decision, move ahead, and get this program up.
Yes, sir. They actually told us that they're taking funds from other projects that were not moving as rapidly as ours, and they gave us those dollars with a finite time period. They didn't set it in stone what the finite time period is, but the email that I've got says, I hope to hear from you tomorrow. And one other element is that we have all of our right-of-way documents prepared and ready for signature. Of course, it's the chicken and the egg. You need to know that the funding's in place, that you have your permits before you want to donate your right-of-way, because that right-of-way is coming to you.
It's similar to the rental issue.
I'm sorry?
I said it's similar to the rental issue. Chicken and egg. Just
Two questions. One, there's no time limit as to how fast our credits come back to Northside.
That is correct.
Okay. Second is, you mentioned 2.8. If we were to vote tonight, we're going to want to vote on 1.4.
Well, I think we settled, and Mr. Dyer, correct me if I am wrong, that in, I think it was way back April 15th, 2010, we were in agreement at that meeting with all the council of Northside, and the city was there and everything, that the right-of-way, or excuse me, the roadway is a system improvement. So that system improvement, when you put that cash in, it comes back in the form of impact fee credits. So the vote would be for 2.8 of Northside, which, by the way, would bring up their investment to $5.4 million in the parkway.
I guess I'm a little slow. Our contribution is going to be 1.4. The county's doing 1.4.
If the county does 1.4 and the DOT puts 4.3 in, there is a deficit of 2.8.
I got to tell you, Don, that's news and music to my ears, what you're saying, if I'm hearing that correctly. Because what they're saying is that they're actually paying the 2.4, I mean the 1.4 that was our share, so to speak.
Okay.
But we are promising we're going to give them 2.8 million in impact fee credits as the development occurs.
Yes, sir.
Man, here's the only question that I have about it. Isn't that the law anyway? Don't we have to do that? Or what are we voting on if it's already the law? We have to do that.
There is a provision in your ordinance that says in order to get impact fee credits, you must have a development agreement. That's the only reason we're here, is that you have to have a development agreement. Well,
Not for this part. Oh, for that, okay.
And if I may, I'd like to put that into the deep storage.
Okay.
And move forward with the new development agreement as we just discussed.
So,
Mr. Mayor.
question to our council. We need to make a motion tonight. What type of motion would we make so that we can move ahead with this? And because it's not on, with that change, we don't have it out.
I think it is a commitment, because Northside Hospital could actually say to the state, we're paying 2.8 million, but they don't do that unless we've agreed in principle to a development agreement that allows them to recoup that through impact fee credit. So the motion would be to agree in principle to a development agreement to reimburse the cost of the road. I wouldn't put numbers on it because you don't know what that's going to be.
Because they are estimates right
Right.
now. But you're right, subject to an agreement that obviously Northside Council and you would come to.
Mr. Mayor.
Put that on the motion.
Mr. Mayor.
Let's go.
I'd like to make that motion that we proceed to enter into a development agreement with Northside Hospital under the basis of our ordinance where they will put the 2.8 million, advance of 2.8 million, and we will reimburse them by impact fee credits from that service area defined as the Canton Marketplace or Commerce Boulevard.
We have a motion?
Second.
And a second, okay. Any other questions or discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion.
Council.
Good luck. Looking forward to this getting going.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's amazing what you can get done since 2004, isn't it?
Okay. Now, to another. Yeah.
Okay, go with it, and then I had one more that I added the rest of it.
E. D is off, that's right, okay. E is approval of fee simple taking at Smithwick Creek condemnation cases. Is there any question? We've talked about this before. Fee simple taking as opposed to taking a conservation easement.
And the four properties that we're talking about, and so the motion would be to, and I have written resolutions, so the motion would be to approve the fee simple taking, to amend our petitions for fee simple taking in TCAM Partners, Ligon Family, Temple Inland, and Crafton parcels.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion or questions? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
reservoir.
We had,
Old business.
we had a, under new business,
Under old business. It was supposed.
we added it under old business?
Yes, sir, because it was supposed to be.
All right, the question, the discussion here is centered around the, whether or not the council is to approve the proposed reservoir manager's office building at the, be constructed at the reservoir, along with, and I assume this is part of the proposal, the SCADA system. And we had, varying estimates and so forth. The question is, do we approve the plans as they were submitted so that they can go out for bid on these items?
Mayor, I have any questions?
Well, let's go ahead.
I made a motion that we do not approve.
We have a motion that we do not approve that.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All right, discussion. Anybody have any comments?
Mr. Mayor, we just got an email from Cobb County Marietta Water Authority telling us that the value of our percentage share of the water is valueless to them at this point in time, and it won't have any value until the Corps of Engineers gives them a permit to withdraw more water out of Lake Altoona, and therefore I question the validity of plopping more money into the reservoir until we know the status of their request to the Corps of Engineers.
Anyone else?
I have one question, is that many people have been asking, probably everybody on council, is when they can use the lake for recreational purposes. And I think nobody seems to have an answer. If this house is built and we have a reservoir manager there and they put in the appropriate boat launch, will it then be available for recreational use?
Well, I think that may be a different question in that recreational use may or may not come before, it could actually come before that would happen. But I think the question here is really whether or not we approve of those plans to go out for bid.
I think Dave said it, it's two separate issues, and I think we're moving ahead on that recreational aspects of it. So this here, Dave was kind enough to give us plans 2 weeks ago, and looking at the space that's being proposed, it's overkill as far as I'm concerned, which drives the dollar volume up, and that's my concern about it. And as Mr. Cummings pointed out, with the latest information we had coming back from the value placed upon this reservoir, and the expert is free to make a decision on it until he gets the Corps engineers come back and give him some sort of information. We're sitting here going to throw money and end the conversation.
Anyone else?
Yes, sir, I'd just like to say that what Mr. Cummings says makes perfect sense, and I just want, it's almost a symbolic gesture to not spend any more money after we've spent nearly $30 million, but we now have a document in place saying that Cobb County has absolutely zero interest in taking over anything because their 75% may be completely worthless to them. So in good conscience of taking care of the taxpayers' money, I'm not going to vote to spend another dime up there till we know what we've got.
Well, one thing I would like to say is the fact that, you know, everyone would like to see that reservoir finished, and I don't want to, I think we need to be frugal about our expenditures. I don't think we should say there'll be no more expenditures, because we do need, I think, entertain other proposals. Let's say that we won't rule out every proposal that comes before this council, but I do believe we have an obligation to consider what's presented here. But I tend to agree with you. It's a little bit overkill from my perspective too.
Yes, sir, that, what you said does make sense. I would consider something more reasonable.
Okay. Jack?
I still say, like several mentioned, the most important thing we do there is put that boat launch in there and let these people start using that, because driving by that every day, lots of them were promised they would have that to use. I'm sure that's a big selling point of why they actually moved in there. It's another great park that we could have. It wouldn't cost us a lot of money we've already spent, most of it.
Ms. Rush?
Yeah, I had one question for Dave. What did it cost us to get those plans developed?
We had a contract of,
How much?
$30,000. Plus, we spent about $40,000 bringing utilities up.
Okay, so, and if we were to redo the plans, it would cost us, yeah, but not another full 30 probably. Is that 30 our cost or that 30 total
30
cost?
total.
Yeah, so our cost is 25%. So,
I think all we're talking about is, it's not that we're abandoning the plans, but that we are putting them on hold until we have a better idea of where we stand. So even though we've already spent that money, it isn't necessarily a total loss. It may come to a point in 6 months that we say, let's go ahead with it again. That would be a reopening or a new proposal. Just at this time, I don't see the benefit of moving forward.
Okay. Anyone else?
Can I say something?
Sure.
A couple of things. It doesn't cost anything to put it out to bid. I mean, we don't know what the cost of this building is going to be until the bids are in. So we've got ranges. According to the architect, he believes that this project can go to bid in the middle of next month. I'd say more towards the end of the month. Secondly, it is somewhat tied in with the SCADA system, which is going to monitor all the equipment up there. There is not enough room in the operation house at the top of the dam to house this equipment, so it needs to go someplace. And the most important thing up there is keeping the compressors up and running, because that's what's holding those gates up that we can raise and lower. Included with this building is an emergency generator, and its primary focus is not necessarily the building, but backup power for those generators, for those compressors.
Can I ask what the cost of that generator is?
The generator was estimated around $60,000.
And the equipment that's going to be in there, do you have any idea what that is?
But the SCADA equipment itself, that whole project, I think, is in the vicinity of $800,000.
And the estimates we had before were $200,000.
No, that 800 was the SCADA project. The building itself, we have a couple of estimates from contractors in the range of $350,000 to $500,000.
Would it be possible that we look at the architect, if this is what's costing us so much money?
I don't think that's the issue.
Yeah, I think that the building, it's pretty streamlined in terms of utilitarian buildings. I mean,
How large is it?
1,800 square feet.
1,800 square feet is costing us
Well,
$350,000.
well, but what I'm saying is there are other costs in there that aren't necessarily direct building costs. $60,000 for the generator. We've got another $10,000 allowance for security systems. We've got another $10,000 for electric gates on the front, and then there's another allowance for about $18,000 for furnishings and furniture. So that's nearly $100,000.
So we're at $250 for.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, one comment here, and this is just kind of one of these what-if things. I think in the memos that I've read, it says the reservoir can be of future use to the city of Canton, but may not necessarily be of any use to the Cobb. So if let's just say Cobb finally says, well, the hell with it, and they walk away from their $80 million or whatever it is, and then we got it, and we don't have this house built, we're gonna have to foot the bill ourselves, unless we can sell the whole darn thing. So if we can get them to pay 75% of it, I'd say we should go for it now. And
We have an agreement, they can't just walk away from it legally.
Mr. Mayor, on the plan, going through the plan, we have 3 offices, we have a lab, we have a file and copy room, we have a SCADA room, we have a conference room, we have a break room, a mud room, a shower, and then total facility, bathroom facility, and a mechanical electrical room. We've got a lot of room, and that's what I have a problem with. I mean, why have all these offices with these doors, a lab, a conference room? Why don't we look at maybe just getting not a double wide, but a single wide, roll it up? I know, I'm real, I'm not,
Well, there are some agreements that are in place that this has to, or get approval from TPA and their whole architectural review committee.
Who?
Technology Park Atlanta.
Oh, okay, yeah, right, gloves.
Yeah, well,
Well, we agree it up. But, you know, this is not something where the public is going to be walking in and out of. So,
Okay. Mr. Cummings?
Again, I think we're just over discussing this. We have a motion on the floor, and I request that we take a vote.
Okay.
And a yes vote is against building the building.
Mr. Barry Schwartz's motion is that we not approve those plans as we have been submitted to us. Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no?
No.
Okay, we have one. Okay. All members voted for the motion with the exception of Mr. Rush. Okay. Next item. Okay, I guess it's an 8A, Janet London. Well, she is here. I didn't see you sitting back there. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm sorry you had to wait through all this. I hope Buzz is paying you overtime or whoever. But we had asked her to come, and thankfully she did, regarding perhaps changing the voting precincts for the city of Canton where that, because of the last situation, number one, we had people who had to go to their regular county precinct, but they couldn't vote in the city election there. And they had then be told, you gotta go to City Hall to do that. The thought now is maybe we should make those uniform in that they can go to wherever their normal county precinct would be and vote there, and also vote the city election if there's a city election occurring at that time. Or even during just city elections, they would go to their normal, even if there's not a county issue on it, they would go to their normal county precinct and vote. It would make more sense, keep people from, a lot of people don't want to vote if they go there and say, hey, you got to go over there now, so that's what we want to do.
Well, that's,
go ahead.
That's correct, what you're saying, but one thing that, if you, I think, Susan gave me the handouts that I had, that you have beside you. Of course, the audience does not have that, but the city of Canton plays in several of the county precincts, which is the Canton precinct, the Clayton precinct, Liberty, R.T. Jones, Teasley, and Univetta. Okay, so if that happens, and normally during a municipal election, you host your municipal elections in an odd year, which normally we do not have county elections that year. So if it was at the time we would not have a county election, then as you spoke about, Mayor, we would have to open up all of those precincts to accommodate those voters if you chose to go that way.
I understand
And
that.
which would be, the cost.
You'd expect us to pay a little more.
You would bear all the costs on that, yes.
Okay. But we wouldn't be bearing any cost to change it now for this year, right?
No, you would not, sir. Of course, you all know that we're going through the redistricting process at this time. So if this decision is made very quickly, very soon, if you decide to change your municipal precinct to mirror up to the county precincts, there would be no additional cost for that change at this time because the Secretary of State's office bears the cost of issuing notifications to the voters during a redistricting year.
Right, good.
Okay.
Did anyone have any comments or questions of Ms. Munda while we're here?
Well, I think everybody knows where I stand as relative to where we vote. I don't think we should ask our voters to have to vote in a city election in one place and their other voting place, or another place to vote in the federal or other county-wise.
One comment I'd like to, I understand what you're saying. I mean, it just seems like it just makes logical sense when there's a county election, taking place. But let's just say that it is, an odd year when it's your election and there's no county precinct, taking place. You have to look at how the voters or your citizens of the city going to react when they do go to that county precinct, and it only involves, and there's at least 3 poll workers there with the equipment and all the expense that takes place, and it doesn't have but maybe 200 voters in that precinct, but we still have to open up that precinct.
Mr. Mayor, at this past election, the early voting, all this,
Yes.
we had numerous postings. We had newspapers put out that, this is where you go and all these type of things. And still, when it comes down to the election, they go to where they thought it
That's
was.
right, they do.
And they didn't walk home. They don't vote.
And we don't want that to happen.
We don't.
We don't want
So
that to
it's,
happen.
we don't want that to happen. So I think it's important that we.
Do you have, excuse me, John, but do you have obviously it would be probably 5 times the cost, right, of what we're paying now
Yes, it
for
would. If
simply
it did not share with the county election.
Okay, if it shares with the county election, what would we pay, a percentage? Is that the way
We
we
pay
do
a
it?
percentage, yes,
Okay.
that's right.
So, do you have any idea if it's
No,
not
you-
sharing, what that cost might be?
If it was not sharing and it was, and you opened up, oh my goodness.
Well, there, it looks like there's 5.
Well, right now,
So it's
a
5.
city election, by yourself, hosting it here at City Hall, runs around $7,000 to $9,000. Okay, so you would really have to multiply that about
So-
5 times.
So it could be from 7,000 or 8,000 to 40,000.
Right.
Okay, now does that make a difference?
I mean, now that's exactly what we want to talk
Right,
about.
I wanted to make sure we understood exactly what the cost would be for us, even though it's more convenient. And You know, I think the convenience is really important, but that's the kind of thing we need to decide. And how soon do you have to know that? Did you have to know that?
Yesterday. I mean,
Sorry about that.
Yesterday, because we are in the redistricting process, and I have to be completed with that by April the 20th. And so we're working at a very tight timeline, because of course there's the Department of Justice submissions and legal things that we have to go through to make sure this is done properly. It's just not a matter of sending out the cards. It's getting, lots goes into these kind of things, because we have combinations, for the ballots. It's very easily done to go to your precinct and bring up your city ballot. The city of Holly Springs does this because they have their elections on even years, and so does the city of Ball Ground. But with it being on odd years, it just makes a difference, because you've got to have those combo codes to bring up that city ballot for those city voters. Now, one thing that, if, I'm just going to say this, if you were for this year considering having any type of election, it would, be economically okay, I guess, or whatever, to make this change, because you will not bear that additional cost, as I said earlier, for mailing out that notification to the voters. And then if you choose to go back, I mean, I don't know, I've been here in Cherokee County 8 years, and last year was the only time we have had that problem when the city and the county had the elections at the same time.
So if we are going to have something this year on that ballot, then really we wouldn't pay any more than we normally would, right?
Exactly, sir, that's right.
Okay, and this would give us time to budget additional money in FY 2013, I guess, knowing that if we were going to have elections then, for the extra cost of the elections. That's what we would have to do, budget, another $35,000 maybe.
I mean, you can do, you talk about confusing voters, I know that they're confused folks when it comes to election day voting. You can turn around and turn that back into your city precinct on an odd year when you host your municipal elections.
Oh, we could do that? Now, wait a minute, let's think about that.
Notify you.
Well, it's more than that.
It would be confusing.
Then you're gonna bear the cost of notifying those
But
voters.
you'd constantly be going back and forth with the
You would be.
department.
You would be.
Changing your precinct.
You would be, you would be.
Oh. That'd be complicated, Mr.
Yeah, you could, but it seems like voters have that in their head, like, if it's a county, I go to my county precinct and everything should be done there. And if it's a city, they come here. And as you said, we are open, our office is open for early voting as well. And by law, we can't even have a precinct on election day at our office, but, voters come in and swear that they voted there on election day. So that's.
I think my biggest concern would be where we had a city election only and they show up at their polling place expecting to vote and there's no big sign on the door that says you gotta go to
There would be a
151.
big sign on the door.
And really a big sign. Because we don't want them going home. We want our populace to vote, and as you can probably agree with me, Jen, we don't really have a good turnout in this city.
No, that's true. Very true.
We just did some arithmetic here, and based on the last election, I think it would run about $20 a vote.
Maybe that was your campaign.
There's a discussion that ties in with this, and this is a discussion of possible fire district bond referendum. Right. We need to put on the ballot.
We did need to discuss that, and if that's the direction we're going to take, then, that may play into this whole decision here.
So I think that's something we got to think about, because if we don't, we aren't going to have that, and we need to look at that. So I know the urgency of this matter, and even for us to come back and say we want to put that referendum on there.
If we told you
In your handout as well, you have a timeline. I think that I had earlier to council and to the mayor, and so we are working on and this timeline was presented at the end of 2011 to interested parties.
So you need a resolution, if we were to do that, no later than April the 9th? to vote in the July primary, to have a referendum in the primary. So that's pretty quick. So if we did that, we'd have to do that like the first Thursday for sure.
And that's the work session, but we could
It
put
could
that
be,
on.
so we could do that if we needed to.
Of course, the decision is to be made to move that, your county precincts to mirror, your city precincts to mirror the county, you know, would need to be very quickly because it's a lot of processes, you know, within my organization to start developing that.
Did you even do that for the July primary?
Oh, yes. I mean, we don't even have our school board maps yet, so yes, we can.
We're gonna have to do it.
We're gonna have to do it, yeah.
I don't know why.
But I don't need to be waiting on the city of Canton, once the governor has signed, the act for the school, you know, the new school board maps, I have to move.
I don't know why we couldn't make that decision tonight.
I think we should.
And as far as whether or not we're willing, we want to have one precinct for each voter. In other words, they don't have to come to different places.
I make a motion, we approve that.
I think it would be your city precinct.
Says every voter has, they go to one precinct, whether it's a county election or a city election, or both. Is that what everybody understands? Okay.
And that's what'll cost us the extra.
But it won't cost us anything to do that right now, no. It's when we hold an election that is a city-only election, and they have to man 6 locations instead of 1. That's the difference.
And you will be paying a percentage for those particular precincts listed here. that
Even
have
in the county.
City voters in them.
County election.
Where would that be?
Well, it's wherever they vote in the county.
What is
Do you
your county
have a
precinct? That's where you would go to vote for your city issue. I want everyone to understand this, because it is, I know, very confusing to voters and to folks and to understand. You know, and, you know, we have the code section here.
We have a motion and a second here that we proceed. Did anyone else have any questions or comments
I
about
just
that?
have one comment. I know it will cost us a lot more money, but I think if we have it more convenient, we probably will get a better turnout, which is what we really
I
want.
tend to agree with you. Absolutely, you'll get a better turnout. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any others? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? Janet, we got a resolution in support of doing that. Now, the other item that plays into this is our potential for a bond referendum for our fire tax. And when would you would have to know that by?
April the 19th.
The problem with that, the problem we got there is that we could potentially, just potentially, vote to place a referendum on there. Would you have to have the exact wording by then, because we got a consultant looking at our fire service to tell us what we need to do so we'd know how much money we'd be asking for. Does that make sense?
The answer to that is yes. You have to have the actual referendum.
Yes. And the
By the
call
ninth?
has to be made, and there's several weeks that the call has to be in the paper, and yada, yada, right off.
Okay, so then it looks like,
The 19th.
so then we could do that in November.
November would be more easily doable.
You said that,
Yes, I'm sorry, you are correct.
April
I'm
19th?
looking at my
We have to
timeline.
act by the 9th.
Yeah, the
Which means
9th.
by April 9th, you have to have all the details for your referendum. It ain't gonna happen.
what's,
I mean, of course, you got November as well.
Right.
November.
Then you're talking July getting it done.
I think we need to tonight, and I think we need to vote to decide, do we want to pursue that as direction, even though at this point, we don't know what the dollar figures are, but that will come along, and we'll be working in that direction. But, I
But you have
mean,
to July then.
instead of July, we'll be looking at November.
Well, you will need all your numbers and everything ready by July, so that you have your referendum ready to be ready for November.
We should do that, shouldn't we, Mr. Wood, have all of this?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I would like to support that, and I'd like to have Mr. Rush head up that committee. He is the one that's been pushing for fire, and I'd like for him to be.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did call it out of order there. We do have this on there, but we're gonna go with it anyway. We're not hurting anything.
This late hour, who cares?
All right. We have a motion that we pursue this as a direction for our fire service for the November general election. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Thank you very much. Janet, thank you for your patience and.
I enjoyed
You're welcome to come back sometime.
I'll take you up on that.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Mayor, I still would like to, because he's been deeply involved in the.
I agree, he has been concentrating in that, so we won't involve you in that, for sure. Okay. Approval to amend the budget to resolve 2011 end-of-year general fund negative variances. Somebody want to explain
Mr.
that, or
Mayor.
we know what that is?
I won't explain it, but I'll make a motion that we do approve the amendments, and I think Mr. Wood or Mr. Ingram, if he's still here, can explain it. But I'll make the motion to approve the amendment.
Okay, second motion and a second, okay. Nathan, you want to come up? You are awake back there, aren't you? It's getting later. It's not as late as I thought it would be at this point.
Mayor, Council, thank you, and I'll promise I'll be real quick. It's inevitable through a fiscal year, there's expenditures and some issues that we could not have predicted and therefore budgeted. For this year, there were 4 departments that were over budget. One of those was $95. The other one was approximately $700 or $800 for electricity bills and stuff that impossible accrual, small amounts. 2 departments were over budget. What I'll subjectively say, I guess, was a material amount. The Downtown Development Authority ran over budget because we had to blend the Main Street program. The Main Street program, even though it's a component unit, is so intertwined with the general fund's finances that we have to bring those revenues and expenditures in. I think so, even though it was just a few $1,000s, I think someone said 4 digits, but it did cost just for a few $1,000s for it to go over budget. The other department was the tax department. We had in 2011 a tax sale. There was an appreciable amount that was paid to the clerk of Superior Court for the filing of the FIPAs, and then the subsequent dues associated with the actual property sales. We did get revenues to support that. But we're just, and this is just a formality, really on paper only. We're just transferring a few dollars here. The bottom line on expenditures, we were under budget, a positive variance. So I'm just taking a few dollars from a few areas and putting it somewhere else. It's just a formality.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other questions or discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All in favor of the motion. Discussion of the acceptance of the new health insurance plan, and we need to take action on this, apparently because the contract year is April 1. Jack? Sure.
I received today a letter from Blue Cross Blue Shield telling me that my doctor was someone I didn't even know in Woodstock. My doctor for 30 plus years now, for probably 50 years, has been right here in Canton. And I guess 30-something years medical associates, but now they're saying it's somebody else that I don't even know.
Well, I got a letter, but I got another doctor out Highway 20 there, but what you have to do is you have to call them, and they will change that.
I did call them, and what they said is that they don't accept a
New patient.
POS.
Oh, POS. They don't accept the POS.
And I had a PDO before, and I wasn't contacted, I wasn't asked about it, nothing. So,
You have to contact another POS doctor.
So you're telling me my insurance will not cover the doctor I've been going to, even though it's the same company?
I'm gonna be in that man's office tomorrow. He's gonna be very intimate with my wife. So, I would, if you knowing him that long, I would be very, you would have to put pressure on him.
I'm just trying to figure out, is there going to be change, and I don't know anything about it, I'm just curious. Why? Can you give me why?
You know, pretty much there was a group, including staff members. There was, I don't know how many staff members. There were probably 10. I don't know. Hookie has had insurance experience. He was involved in the discussion about that. We met with the Blue Cross Blue Shield people, and they made several, not recommendations, but they presented several alternatives there in order to try to keep our insurance costs where they are or just under that. And you know,
And I asked, they said it was something about $100 or $150 or whatever a month difference. And I said, well, is that a possibility that I could pay that? I said, no. So, you know, it's just one of those things that I thought was awfully extreme to find out about it through a letter from somebody.
right. Jack, I also had the PPO, but that's what, you know, there were only 5 people total within the county government that had PPO. And
That cost about $51,000.
I said county, sorry about that.
Mr. Mayor.
I said county government, city government, sorry about that.
Mr. Mayor.
I also had a new police officer last night, but that's all right.
I guess just finding it out that way is, sure.
But you can go and contact and find a POS doctor, and they got hundreds of them. You don't have to go to Woodstock, and they'll change that. Well,
Yeah, they definitely would change it. Well, I called to change it as well.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
2 things. Action needed. We need to move on this, but also, as we, last 2 years, we have been pushed into this without having enough notice. I did in this packet get some sort of description of what the program's about, but we did not get the financial information that I think we really need to look at. And at any point in time, as far as I know, unless Mr. Huffman has another point of view on that, we don't pay the premium, they drop us, and we pick up somebody else. So I say we approve it, let's get going, and let's get these questions resolved after we figure out what's the numbers we're looking at. Because Jack, you just said it's extra $100. Well, you need.
Well, basically that extra 100 or so is out of your pocket for even a POS, okay? That's even for the POS. And the employees are paying a portion, something in the neighborhood of $20 a month or 20 a pay period.
20 a pay period.
20 a pay period.
which nets down to 16.
Yes, yeah, basically since it's a pre-tax, it nets down to a cost of actually about $16 a pay period. So they are, where before the employees paid nothing else. So they are having to pay a little bit now.
Mr. Mayor, I just have one question. Was that a motion that Mr. Beresford made to move on?
Did you make a motion? You made a motion that we move
I will make
forward to
the
this?
motion officially now. Yes, it is a motion that we accept the health insurance plan.
Okay. Have a motion?
Second.
Second. Anything else?
I have a question.
Yes.
I had asked Nathan earlier in the week when I got news of this proposal, how much extra cost this would be to the employees. We've already said that. It's about $20 a pay period, about $42 a month. If we don't, what he told me, if we leave it alone, what we have, it'll cost the city about an extra $100,000 a year. My concern was for the lower paid employees we have at the bottom of the totem pole making $20,000 or so, something like that. This is going to be significant whack out of their paycheck. I've not had anybody come to me with a concern, but I just wanted to ask Nathan, is he still here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there you are. Are there concerns? What's going to happen? How many employees are affected that are on the low end? I mean, I know they're not all on the plan. I just don't want to overlook the.
I don't know the exact statistics, sir, on how many and what their pay level is. to have a single employee-only plan versus, but you know, just an example, if it's an employee spouse that it makes $20,000 to $25,000 a year, their premium stays about the same. So. About the same. Yes, sir.
I did, and I don't have the numbers, but I did a quick review, and the impact, the greatest, I guess, dollar impact is at the employee only, and that's $20 a pay period. But as I looked at employee spouse, employee with children, it was about the same. There was minimal differences in those two categories, but the biggest difference, which was a benefit, was a significant reduction in the pay period at the family level. I think it was like $40 or $50, wasn't it?
That was one of the concerns we had when we were going through a review, is that we had good participation from the employees, but very low participation by spouse or family. And because we were out of line on the way the premiums were being charged. And we made those adjustments in hopes that those who have family or spouse will now enjoy the benefits of having a group policy.
Okay. Anyone else?
Plus, we're adding vision.
That's right. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion and a second. We haven't voted on that yet, have we? Okay. Any others? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay, all members, with the exception of Mr. Goodman, voting in favor of the motion. Discussion of the city charter committee revisions and ordinance. First, by Mr. Cummins.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the revised charter.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Okay, and the way I understand this is that it takes two adoptions. It takes adoption tonight, then we would, as I understand, discuss this at the next work session, and then it would be voted on again at the second meeting in April. Now, if anything is changed subsequent to our vote tonight, then you would have to, it's still going to require two more adoptions, okay? So if you adopt it tonight, there's a change the next work session, or we decide we want to change something, then it has to, you're going back to the first adoption again. Is that correct?
Right, because you have to adopt it twice, it needs to stay the same both times.
Or it's got to be adopted twice in its final form. Correct. Right. Mr. Cummins.
I was going to basically clarify the procedure so that we wouldn't have to spend all night discussing it. It requires two adoptions, and tonight, making the motion for the first adoption, the only thing that does, if approved, proceeds it through 3 weeks from tonight where we will discuss and clarify it. It does not finalize the approval process. So you'll have 3 solid weeks in which we will also make 3 weekly announcements of the change or the adoption. 3 weeks from tonight, which is April 5th, this council would discuss and clarify any issues with it, and on the 19th, it would proceed to a second motion for adoption, and only if it passed at that point in time would it be adopted. So tonight's motion, only a vote for adoption, only moves it forward. Isn't that correct, Bobby?
That's correct.
Let's vote. We have a motion and a second. Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, can I just clarify?
Yes.
The version you have that's on the computer is not the version you're adopting. There was a subsequent change. Mr. Cummins can describe.
Yeah, let me, in that long point, the one thing that I had hoped to do in bringing this forward is get the greatest consensus of this council in moving and adopting this charter. So under 235 paragraph K, after having received extensive number of phone calls, I removed that from the proposed
proposed revision in order to gain a consensus of as many as possible to move forward with that charter and overcome the flaws that exist in the existing charter.
Okay, Mr. Rush?
I have a few comments. I know I'm not going to make a lot of people happy, but while I don't object to some of the proposed charter changes, I do have a strong objection to several, and to the fact that this has never been brought before the full council for discussion until it's coming in the resolution form. And the portions of the proposal that I find objectionable are those in which authority is being transferred from council to the mayor, as well as those areas in which administrative authority is being given to the mayor in apparent contradiction to the council manager form of government, which is what we are. I tend to agree with the recent article in the Tribune, which stated that the proposed changes are more typical of a strong mayor, weak council form of government, with the mayor assuming executive authority and the council being solely a legislative body. None of us in Canton can deny that this city's in a fiscal morass. In my opinion, these problems were caused by the fact that in previous administrations, we had persuasive mayors with councils that were either unwilling or unable to counteract certain activities. And as a result, we have a wastewater plant that needs millions in repairs, a $60+ million reservoir debt, a golf course we can't afford, a downtown theater that's a fiscal financial drain, and Mr. Beresford's private streets. And now it appears to me that this charter committee is willing to, well, it also, I saw in the article that the mayor in a neighborhood community is complaining he wants to get his power back. And then a recent councilman there resigning said there's a lack of leadership. And it looks like now this charter committee wants to give more power to the mayoral position in this city. And in my opinion, I don't think you need power to lead. I think if you have to have power to be a leader, then you're not a leader, you're a would-be dictator. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Mr. Cummins?
All of the things that he mentioned happened under the old charter. So therefore, I don't know that the changes to the charter are going to create the situation that occurred under the old charter. The other point is that we will have an entire meeting, or to the extent that you want it, to discuss these. And the only thing we're trying to accomplish tonight is a movement forward in which we all can express our opinions and discuss it. And if we don't like it, if Mr. Rush doesn't like it at the point in time of April 19th, he can vote against it. I mean, it's pretty straightforward in the law and the ordinance.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Beresford?
Once again, we have a situation where this information was available to those that had an interest. It was on a changing schedule, and at any time, individuals could contact committee members, ask questions, and or contact the charter committee and ask questions. But now, here we sit again, getting to the point where we need to make a decision, and all of a sudden, there's a bunch of concerns that pop up. I would just ask sincerely that over the next 3 weeks, the council does due diligence, looking at this, bring forward so that we can have a clear understanding of what is the issues, so we can move ahead on this. And it shouldn't be a big project, but we have made it, once again, a major obstacle.
Okay. We have,
One quick question.
yes, sir.
Mr. Cummins, could you just read for us the part that has been taken out that's not on our printed material here? Just for the record.
If you give me a second to get to it, I will.
Page 8.
No, it's in section 2. The section that's been taken out is under 2.35, which says powers and duties of the mayor. And the section is K, have the power to suspend the city manager for up to 7 days with pay. In the event of such suspension, the mayor shall notify the members of the city council of the reasons for such suspension and shall call a meeting of the city council within 7 days to determine the appropriate discipline of the city manager. Such discipline shall be determined by the city council and may include termination. Now, the purpose of having that clause in originally was based on a city manager committing an egregious offense and allowing the immediate suspension so that we wouldn't be subjected to the situation where we had several days where we had to call a council together. There was objections to the inclusion, there was objections to the removal of that clause. Since the likelihood of such an event occurring is very slim, and the ability of this council is to call a very quick meeting to address it, it was thought by removing it that we were doing no harm and we were overcoming this perceived incorrectness that the mayor is gaining power. It's not a gain of, I do not see this charter as granting the mayor more power. In fact, I see it as making it a more balanced form or way of government, that this council is controlled, the mayor is controlled, and the city manager is controlled. It's balanced across the board. But I hope that answers your request.
Anyone else? Let me say that I do think this committee that worked so hard for 16 months or longer, 15-member citizens committee, and they spent a lot of time. Several of them are here tonight, and I do appreciate their work. Our charter has been a mess. I mean, it's been, a real mess. It's easy to say it's a power grab for the mayor, but basically there's no more power really. Everything that the mayor does has to be confirmed by the council. I mean, any authority granted in there at all has to be approved by the council. I mean, the only thing that's in there, which was commonplace throughout the study, as I understand it, was the veto power. And the veto power sounds like, man, that's good, you can stop anything. If I didn't like something, what all that does is puts the council on notice and the public on notice that the mayor, whether it's me or whether it's somebody 10 years from now, believes that there should be a little further study and further consideration over the next 30 days, at which time they can vote again, and with the same vote, they can override the mayor at that point. So it's not like a permanent veto, it's just a temporary veto. And quite honestly, I could do that now almost. I mean, I could just not sign something for 30 days and say you need to be thinking about this. Ultimately sign it. But and so it's really not that much of a change. Mr. Beresford.
Thank you. I recall that when this came up, you asked council to name a committee member. You did it 3 times. And because we all recognized in a workshop that there was a problem with the charter. It needed to be worked on. The council would not come forward with naming a committee. You did step up and name that committee. I have talked with numerous committee members, and one of the major concerns that they always voiced was no personalities. We're looking at it as a pure document, and they were very concerned that they would maintain a very open mind. And my hat's off to them and their effort and their conscious ability to move ahead and try to do something right for the city, and I thank them also.
Right. Thank you. And I also want to thank the committee, that the liaison committee, the review committee that met with the citizens committee and their representatives, and basically that 5-member group has brought this with their recommendation. So we have a motion and a second. Is there anything else? Okay. So what we voted for is the adoption of this, but it requires 2 adoptions. So keep that in mind. This basically all this does is move it one step down the road. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no?
No.
Okay. All members voting for the motion except for Mr. Rush. Okay. Thank you very much. The next item is I was sent some information from Cherokee County regarding the collection of city property taxes. The tax commissioner has offered to contract with the city if we choose, and that they had asked that they were going to actually be billing and collecting property tax for some other cities too. But now this is not a freebie. I mean, you know, it would be an offer to do it if we pay them to do it, certainly. Okay. But what they have offered is $2 per tax bill. Now, I don't know, Mr. Wood and I have talked about it, and I've asked that he give us an idea of the economic feasibility of that. You know, right now, of course, we buy bills, we mail out bills, we collect the taxes, we pay the postage, and all that. So what we would do for the $2 per bill would be, basically, they would do all that, okay? And they would, in other words, if you're when you get your county tax bill, they'd be one bill, but it'd have a section there for your city taxes on it, okay? So one bill instead of 2 bills, they'd come at the same time, and it would be both on the same bill. But anybody have any comments or questions? I guess, you know, I didn't know whether we need, you know, I don't know that we have to make a decision on that tonight, but I think we would have to fairly soon, or if we were going to do that.
Mr. Mayor, I just think it's a cost-benefit analysis that Mr. Wood should probably prepare for us, and then we'll just take a look and see what's it going to cost for us to do it, and what's the benefit of having them, the county, do it for us.
Did we able to look at that this afternoon?
It'll at $2 a parcel, we've got about 9,500 parcels that would be affected. So $19,000 to $20,000 would be the cost to us. It cost us now probably about twice that amount. It's hard to establish exactly what the number would be, because, as you know, we will have one person who handles property taxes, alcohol license, business licenses, and other matters. I hope that, and I would be very supportive fundamentally of council deciding to enter into a contract with the county, provided that we can keep the current employee and apply the service product that employee to some other much-needed staff needs right now.
Mr. Cummings?
I just could throw it back to Mr. Wood that this would, by doing this, would give you capacity to address some of the cross-training issues that you currently have, would it not?
It would, and I think it could help us in some other areas. I am told that the county has a senior exemptions department. I don't know how many people are there, but I think they go to much greater length in verifying the legitimacy of senior exemption requests and following through with reviewing those that need to be.
Mr. Rush, you had it.
Yeah, I just didn't catch the number correctly. How many parcels at $2?
We would have about 9,500 that would qualify for receiving a tax bill.
I misunderstood.
Now, which parcels would not qualify? Are you talking about exempt properties?
Exempt property.
Okay.
Right. We don't send a bill to exempt properties because there's no reason to do that.
Just tell me.
Now, Ms. Wood, as far as collections, are they better at collecting the taxes, or is there, if there's no people that are not paying, do we pay extra to go out and for them to go out and collect it, or?
I think a number of questions that would need to be made a part of whatever contract we entered into with the county. That sort of question, I understand also that the county historically has accepted partial payments, and we have not. So So there need to be some understanding, some formulation for how any partial payments would be applied.
I'd be surprised if they did that. They might do it.
Well, our tax collector's one who told me that. I presume she knows what she's talking about. I hope she does.
I would like to propose,
You do.
I'd like to propose that Mr. Wood would come in with in-depth information, answering those type of questions, and we will then look at it, but in the spirit of more discussion and not knowing what we're talking about, let's,
Okay, one thing I would
propose
suggest in regard to what you're saying there is that we make sure that if there is an interest, that if we'd ask Mr. Wood if he would contact the county to see what our deadline would be for notifying them if we chose to do that.
Right, I think that would be
Because
part of
we'll
it.
have to be sending out bills, this fall, but.
I think that'd be part of the package that he would come forward with.
Would it be wise to have somebody from that department come over here, because we might ask some questions that we don't know?
Wouldn't be a problem to ask them two certain.
I mean, it just might as well go direct to the horse's mouth.
Well, I would think that he would, Mr. Wood could get in touch with him, between now and the next meeting for sure, and get as much information as you can, and if that's appropriate, that'd be fine, but, I can't imagine there's too many questions about what we do, and that's pretty simple, straightforward to me, but it could be.
I don't know, it's 9:15 tonight, so. You don't have a shortage of questions, that's for sure.
That's right, that's a good thing, though, I hate to say it, it wears you out, but it's a good thing.
But now we got the city manager's report.
Not tonight, you
Well, now, we do have one other item that we do need to throw in here, and I'll do it on the mayor's report if you want me to. Mr. Troxler with Infotech has been working on our design development report, which is in response to the consent order that we are under with the EPD. And we wanted him to kind of update us on where they stand on that, because it's time to send that in, and we want to make sure that the council will ultimately get a draft of this thing and know what it's about and can ask any questions they like.
Thank you, Mayor. I know everybody's tired and it is late.
Because you are, right?
Well, no, I'm fine.
Okay.
I haven't had to take any heat so far. We have been working pretty hard on trying to determine what's the best way to address the needs at the wastewater treatment plant. And it looks like we can come up with a project that's basically as bare bones as we can make it. It's about $5.4 million worth of construction. And we got a order from the state to tell them basically what we're going to do about now. So we were going to propose to send them that report and say this is essentially the cost, and this is what's got to happen, and get on with it. There's not. We're very fortunate that the city acquired about an acre and a quarter or so of land from the federal government. Some of y'all were probably involved in here over the last couple of years, and we're going to have to put some structures on that new property, and some new headworks and new parts of the biological system. We're going to have to modify the screen system, and that's the equipment is fairly major part of this. I mean, buying a process equipment for wastewater treatment is fairly expensive, because this stuff is subject to all kinds of corrosion and abrasion, and it just has to be heavy duty stainless steel kind of stuff. So that's kind of the plan that we come up with. Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Wright?
And I'll have a report that'll be available hopefully early next week.
We were looking last year, the year before, about 7 million plus. So this is a good number. We're glad to hear it, and this will keep us in compliance to what we've got to do to keep the state from, or the EPD and EPA, XYZ coming down on us every time we turn around.
That would be the plan, yes.
Yep.
What we need to do too is, as part of this, we got to figure out how we pay $5 million to do this. But we do have some, and Nathan can be very instrumental in this effort, but we do have some bonds that will be coming off. And we also are not sure quite yet of the total impact of our rate increase and the rollback of the usage, so that, we need to know where we are and hope that we can meet that debt service of what we have to have in order to do this when we choose to move forward with it. But we've got to keep in mind that, the rate increases, bringing revenues in, some bonds will be coming off over a period of time. We just need a good financial analysis of where we are and what would be projected down the road in order to try to meet the requirements that we're going to have to do. And we are going to have to step up to the plate and do this, looks like.
We're looking for a motion. Correct?
No, this is just information, that's all we're talking about. No, we're not looking at anything else. And
Neil's gonna distribute something to us.
yeah, and as soon as he finishes the draft,
I'll have that early next week.
and get it to Susan. Yeah, she can get it to everyone. Okay.
Second quick issue, the contract for the operations contract is, I'm planning to have the
RFQ.
RFQ. Plan to have that to Mr. Wood next week, and then he gets to look at it, redline it, do whatever, and we'll keep you folks involved.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we need to adjourn to executive session to discuss litigation and personnel. We have we want to make sure we have a personnel complaint by a temporary employee that some of you heard from tonight, all of you, I guess.
No, it's unemployed.
He wasn't employed.
He was not an employee.
He was not employed? Okay.
Community service.
Okay, he was community service, excuse me.
Required by the judge to give us some free time.
Okay, he was a community service employee or community service worker, okay. And so we wanted to discuss that and litigation. Now, of course, under anything else on that? Okay? If not, then entertain a motion. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
So there's a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion. I don't anticipate coming out and having any further votes.